Chapter 51. Meng Qi quickly received the spirit stones that Lu Qingran owed her from the Huajiang Prefecture Cultivator Alliance. Fellow Daoist, please check. The smiling golden core cultivator handed the brocade bag to her. According to the rules, 1/5 of the spirit stones will be deducted to the alliance. Meng Qi nodded. She quickly glanced at the spirit stones in the brocade bag. Actually, there was not much left. There was still 1 day left. It was hard to think of another way. Shu Qian, these are the inner cores of 2 third-stage demon cultivators. These are the divine devouring vines in their hands. Meng Qi was about to leave when another male cultivator walked into the Cultivator Alliance. Before he came in, his loud voice was heard. It's amazing. The Huajiang Prefecture is far from the demon realm. Why are there so many demon cultivators here recently? And they are all holding this damn thing. Damn, it's really powerful. Luckily, I made sufficient preparations. Otherwise, I might have been hurt by this thing.
Huh?
You have people here? After that person finished speaking, he had already walked into the Cultivator Alliance's main hall. Meng Qi turned to look at him. The person who came was a strong man who looked about 30 years old. He was actually quite handsome. He had thick eyebrows, big eyes, and short black hair. He looked a little wild and flamboyant. The male cultivator had a full beard and wore a short-sleeved cultivator's uniform. It matched his tone of voice very well. The person he called Su Qian was the golden core cultivator who always had a smile on his face. He was obviously very familiar with this male cultivator. He said, Jiwenyuan, I told you to be careful when you speak in the Cultivator Alliance. Sorry. The male cultivator called Jiwenyuan lowered his voice. He scratched his head embarrassedly. This sorry was for Meng Qi. The Huajiang Prefecture is a small place. There are very few people here. I didn't know you were here. Don't blame me for offending you. Meng Qi shook her head and smiled at him. Her gaze landed on the 2 divine devouring vines on the ground. Even as a weapon, they were divine devouring vines with green leaves and all kinds of flowers. At this moment, it looked as if it had been burned by something. Half of it had turned into charcoal. Pay up, Jiwenyuan said to Su Qian. 2 third-stage demon cultivators. I even brought back a divine devouring vine. You'll have to double the price. Su Qian shook his head in amusement and tossed him a brocade pouch. Take it. Let me see. Jiwenyuan looked into the brocade pouch and muttered, a 3rd-stage Yao cultivator costs 107 stage spirit stones. 407th grade spirit stones.
Wow.
Is this divine devouring vines so valuable? You should have said so earlier. No, I brought it back for you last time. Thanks. As Jiwenyuan spoke, he threw the brocade pouch into his storage pouch, turned around, cupped his hands towards Meng Qi, and strode out the door. Meng Qi's heart skipped a beat. After Jiwenyuan left, he took the initiative to ask Su Qian, fellow Daoist, can I exchange these demon cultivators with divine devouring vines for spirit stones? That's right. Su Qian smiled and looked at Meng Qi. A Foundation Establishment cultivator actually felt that a sum of 9th-stage spirit stones was not enough for him. Su Qian was a cultivator who had already entered the nascent soul stage. He was already quite happy to earn a few 107th-stage spirit stones. He was a little surprised, but he still smiled. A 3rd-stage Yao cultivator costs 107th-stage spirit stones. A 4th-stage Yao cultivator costs 108th-stage spirit stones. If you bring back a divine devouring vine, you'll be paid the same amount of spirit stones. He hesitated for a while but still said, a 2nd-stage demon cultivator costs 106th-stage spirit stones. However, there shouldn't be any demon cultivators of this level who can bring a divine devouring vine into the Trichiliocosm. Thank you. Meng Qi cupped her hands towards him. She turned around and walked out of the alliance. Qin Xioma and Chu Tianfeng, one in black and the other in black, were leaning against the outer wall of the alliance. Su Junmo stood on the other side, looking normal. However, his gaze was obviously accusing Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xioma. Hearing the commotion, The three of them all looked towards Meng Qi. Ahem. Meng Qi hesitated for a moment. I want to hunt the demon cultivators from Huajiang Manor who brought the divine devouring vine to invade. She walked straight towards Qin Xiuma. The Cultivator Alliance can use the demon cultivator's inner core and divine devouring vine to exchange for spirit stones. Take it as me hiring you. Other than that, we will distribute the spirit stones fairly according to how much effort we put in. Qin Xiuma hesitated. How many spirit stones can we exchange for? A third-stage demon cultivator costs 107 stage spirit stones, Meng Qi said. She was in the foundation establishment stage, and Qin Xiuma had not been completely cured of his qi deviation. Now, he was only at the third or fourth stage of the golden core stage. The only ones they could hunt were third-tier Yao cultivators. Qin Xiuma hesitated. Then, would he accidentally pay off all his debts? He was not willing to do that.
Huh?
Hunt the demon cultivators from the divine devouring vine? Chu Tianfeng saw Qin Xiuma hesitate. He sneered in his heart, knowing what this guy was thinking. He was just afraid that he would get too excited and pay off his debt in one go. Seeing that Meng Qi was still not looking at him, he could only go over and say, "He doesn't dare to go. I'll go with you." Chu Tianfeng could be considered to have figured out Meng Qi's thoughts during this period. Of course, the spirit stones exchanged by the Cultivator Alliance will be distributed fairly according to how much effort we put in. He could see that Meng Qi was very short of spirit stones recently. As the young palace master of the Burning Sky Palace, the sex resources were naturally given to him. Chu Tianfeng was definitely not short of cultivation resources, but he really did not have many spirit stones. The Dharma treasures that the sect gave him were not cheap, but they could not be casually exchanged for spirit stones. Meng Qi had taken back Lu Qingran's debt, which was a huge transaction of 9th-stage spirit stones. He was still short of money now. Chu Tianfeng really did not dare to pat his chest and say that he would make up for the rest. He could take out a few hundred 8th-stage spirit stones, but Meng Qi would definitely not take it from him for free, and it probably would not be enough. Chu Tianfeng understood this point and instantly made up his mind. He said righteously, Huajiang Mansion is so close to the Burning City. If we don't get rid of these guys, it will be troublesome if they run to the Burning City and hurt people. I'll go with you.
Okay.
Meng Qi nodded, who said, I don't dare. Qin Xiuma glared at Chu Tianfeng coldly. I was just thinking that it would be too troublesome to kill them one by one. Is there any way to gather them together and annihilate them in one go? Heh. Chu Tianfeng sneered. Then have you thought of a way? Let's go and take a look first. The two of them were especially united when they were fighting against others, or Su Junmo. Once the external threat was eliminated, it would be too easy to betray each other. Let's go, Meng Qi. Qin Xiuma said, the demon cultivators probably won't dare to enter Huajiang Mansion. After all, the city has a protective array. They won't be able to enter without a token from the Cultivator Alliance. Yes. Meng Qi nodded.
She knew this.
If the demon cultivators and demonic cultivators wanted to come and go freely in the 3,000 worlds, they had to be like Su Junmo and have a token from the Cultivator Alliance in their hands. Otherwise, it would be fine in the wild, but once they entered the city's protective array would be activated, and they would be automatically attacked. That's not necessarily true. Chu Tianfeng said, I heard from Father that the demon cultivators and demonic cultivators have ways to hide their auras and hide from the array. Unless the city's array seems to be supported by a powerful person, they won't be able to be found out. Those who can enter the 3,000 worlds through the barrier cracks are at most 4th-stage demon cultivators, which is equivalent to our nascent soul cultivators. Can they hide from the city's protective array? Don't forget, all the protective arrays that can be called cities in the 3,000 worlds were set up by the Cultivator Alliance's top artifact cultivator sects from the 4 realms. Qin Xiuma didn't give in at all, and argued back. This method of hiding one's aura is a spell art, not a realm. Chu Tianfeng didn't back down either. Perhaps low-level demon cultivators and demonic cultivators can cultivate their spells to a high realm and hide from the array. Isn't Meng Qi the same? Some spells can be cultivated to a realm that far surpasses one's own cultivation realm. It's because of this that they can save your life. Don't tell me you've already forgotten?
Azu.
Org Qin Xiuma's lips curled up, and his gaze turned cold. You're comparing the demon cultivators to Meng Qi? *CK. Chu Tianfeng flew into a rage. He obviously didn't mean it that way. He opened his mouth and his mind spun rapidly, thinking of how to refute. Su Junmo, who had been stunned in place for a while, suddenly chased after them again. Are you guys going to hunt down those invading demon cultivators with divine devouring vines? Then I have to go, he said. Take me with you, Meng Qi. Chu Tianfeng shut his mouth and looked at Qin Xiuma. Qin Xiuma nodded slowly. What are you going to do? Chu Tianfeng asked. There are 3 of us. There's a spell cultivator, Qin, who cultivates both sword techniques, and Meng Qi, who cultivates medicine. It's enough. That's right, and we're going to hunt down rank 3 demon cultivators. There's no need to trouble you, Qin Xiuma added. The 3 of us are enough. We don't want to share the spirit stones with a 4th person. Didn't you guys just say that you want to get rid of these guys together in one go? Su Junmo said, I have an idea. If the 3 of you cooperate with me, we'll even kill the rank 4 demon cultivators together. This way, everyone will have more spirit stones to share. Qin Xiuma and Chu Tianfeng looked at each other again. They couldn't make the decision on this, so they could only look at Meng Qi. Okay. Meng Qi nodded.
Let's do as we said just now.
We'll split the spirit stones according to how much effort we put in. To her, it didn't matter who she worked with. If Su Junmo joined them, they would get more spirit stones in the end. It was quite good. Chu Tianfeng gritted his teeth and asked reluctantly, What idea do you have? I have an idea too. Meng Qi said, Let's talk as we walk. As she spoke, she took out a bamboo slip and quickly wrote her idea on it. Then, she handed it to Su Junmo.
Huh?
Su Junmo looked at it and widened his eyes in surprise. It's possible, but this array, he was really a little scared. The method Meng Qi listed was very simple. He and Chu Tianfeng would lure the enemy deep. With Meng Qi himself as bait, they would set up the 4 extreme array to trap the demon cultivators who were lured in. But that was the 4 extreme array. Su Junmo didn't know what expression he should have on his face at this moment. That was a secret technique of the heavenly demon White Tiger clan. It was not taught to non-white tigers. Even after following his lord for so many years, he had only heard of this name and seen his lord use it a few times. As for how to set up the array, he didn't know anything. It was impossible for him to know. This array, Su Junmo muttered and repeated, half testing and half looking at Meng Qi in surprise. His heart was full of doubts. Even his lord couldn't break the rules of the heavenly demon. In other words, I have no idea. As soon as Meng Qi spoke, Su Junmo subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. As expected, Meng Qi still didn't know how to do it. Otherwise, he was hesitating whether he should kneel down and greet Her Highness, the Demon Empress. Set up the entire array. Meng Qi continued. Su Junmo's knees went soft, and he really wanted to kneel. He had thought of many possibilities before. Although he secretly muttered that Meng Qi might be the future Demon Empress, she was still the future, wasn't she? It was more likely that he still felt that this young Foundation establishment cultivator was his lord's little lover in the 3,000 realms. In the future, even if his lord returned to the peak, it would be difficult to bring her back to the demon realm. It would be difficult for the Heavenly Demon Elder Council to agree. Among them was his lord's granduncle. No matter how much his lord doted on Meng Qi, there was little hope for her to officially become the empress. But the 4 extreme array, the Heavenly Demon White Tiger clan would only pass it down to their clansmen. Not everyone in the Heavenly Demon White Tiger clan knew how to set up the 4 extremes formation. Su Junmo could count on one hand those who had mastered it. His lord's granduncle, uncles, his lord himself, an elder of the White Tiger clan, and his lord's cousin. Now there was also Meng Qi. Su Junmo looked at Meng Qi with some despair. Should he kneel? Or not? He decided to struggle. What do you mean you can't set it up completely? Only part of it? Meng Qi glanced at him. Su Junmo's expression looked like despair mixed with sadness, and there was also unwillingness and struggle in the sadness. Was it because of the four extremes formation? Meng Qi was a little uncertain. When her teacher taught her, he said that this was a very useful formation to trap enemies. He didn't say that there was anything special about the four extremes formation. The complete four extremes formation could even trap cultivators 3 levels higher than her. Of course, cultivators 3 levels higher than her could crush Meng Qi in cultivation. At most, they would be trapped for half an hour before they could break out of the formation. No matter what, it would give her a chance to escape. However, setting up the complete four extremes formation required a lot of materials and had high demands on the cultivation of the Xiuzhe. Setting up formations in 3,000 worlds required the use of a Xiuzhe's Ling energy. Some large formations required the key parts to be completed in one go. Stopping in the middle to replenish Ling energy and then continuing to draw would not be successful. Meng Qi's present cultivation and Ling energy could not support her to draw the complete four extremes formation. Even 1/10 was barely enough. Fortunately, Meng Qi's cultivation in her last life had not been very high. So her teacher had taught her a few variations of the four extremes formation. Variations were much simpler, and of course, the power was also much lower. Meng Qi pondered for a moment. With Su Junmo and the others here, half an hour was enough for them to do many things. My current cultivation is not enough to set up a complete formation, Meng Qi said. So, I can only use variations. Aya change formation. Su Junmo stuttered. He had never seen anyone who knew the four extremes formation could not set up a complete formation because their cultivation was not enough. What the hell was a change formation?
Yes.
Meng Qi nodded. Wait for me. The four of them happened to pass by the Cloud Immortal Pavilion. She turned and walked inside. I'm going to buy something. She spent 500 grade 8 spirit stones to buy the materials needed to change the four extremes formation. Meng Qi actually did not care that much about spirit stones. She had spent them quite easily previously. Now, whenever she thought of Jiyu, she could not help but feel heartache. She had to kill a few more devouring vine demon cultivators. Otherwise, she would really suffer a loss if she shared the spirit stones with Chu Tianfeng and the others. Meng Qi clenched her fists and made up her mind. It was only because Su Junmo joined that they had a way to kill grade for demon cultivators that she was willing to spend so much money. Outside the Cloud Immortal Pavilion, Su Junmo looked at Qin Xiuma and then at Chu Tianfeng. He was still in a daze. You guys. He took a deep breath. For a moment, he even suspected that they might have an array with the same name. After all, among the cultivators of the 3,000 worlds, there were also artifact cultivators who were proficient in arrays. In the past 200 to 300 years, they had developed well and seemed to be rising again. Su Junmo handed the bamboo slips to the two of them silently. He observed Chu Tianfeng and the others' expressions without blinking. What's this? Chu Tianfeng was the first to finish reading. He was a little confused. Meng Qi seems to be really good at arrays.
Yes.
Qin Xiuma nodded. You've never heard of this name? Su Junmo asked again.
No.
Chu Tianfeng shook his head. Burning Sky Palace is a sect of cultivators. We don't cultivate arrays. Neither have I. Qin Xiuma shook his head. Su Junmo. He was suddenly a little afraid. If Meng Qi really did set up the four extreme arrays later, wouldn't that mean that his lord had already admitted that she was? Let's go. Meng Qi had already come out of the Cloud Immortal Pavilion. She walked towards the three of them. Su Junmo, according to your understanding, where should we go first? Since the four of them had decided to work together to earn spirit stones, they were a team. Meng Qi didn't mince her words. She directly asked Su Junmo, who understood the habits of demon cultivators the most. Su Junmo was still a little dazed. He turned to look at Meng Qi. Now, the other's status in his eyes had become even more different. After a while, he met Meng Qi's clear and calm eyes and instantly quivered. Yes, belonged to Meng Qi. What do you mean? Belong to what? Belong to the Red Fox race if they continue to cause trouble. Su Junmo was also a little annoyed. He hurriedly said, their race belongs to the fire element, and they like to stay in the east. As he spoke, he pointed at the east gate. Let's go to the east first. Okay. Meng Qi nodded. The four of them quickly walked towards the east gate. Huajiang Prefecture was also considered a prosperous city. Although it couldn't be compared to Burning City, it was still far better than Fresh Breeze Town. The news of demon cultivators using divine devouring vines to hurt people was suppressed by the mystic Cloud Mountain Villa. Ordinary citizens in the city didn't know about it. Only the Cultivator Alliance issued a mission to kill these demon cultivators in exchange for spirit stones. Meng Qi and the others walked towards the east gate. The atmosphere was still harmonious. Divine devouring vines usually wouldn't hurt ordinary people. After all, spirit energy was their best nourishment. After exiting the east gate of Huajiang Prefecture, there was a continuous mountain range. The forest was deep and serene. At a glance, everything was green. These guys like to hide in the dense forest, but Su Junmo pondered, not knowing what to say. I've seen records about the Red Fox race in books, Meng Qi said. Actually, most of the information she knew about the Red Fox race was told to her by Su Junmo. They like beautiful women. The prettier and more enchanting, the easier it is to arouse their interest. As she spoke, her gaze slowly swept past Shu Tianfeng and the others' faces. Finally, it landed on Qin Xiuma's face. Qin Xiuma, take off your outerwear. Chapter 52. Meng Qi's idea was very simple. These people were all good-looking, but only Qin Xiuma owed her spirit stones. It would be more convenient for her to ask him to help her. Qin Xiuma was stunned for a moment, then the corners of his mouth suddenly curled up. Does this count as Meng Qi's approval that I'm the best looking? Okay. He looked into Meng Qi's eyes and said softly. His slender fingers pressed on his belt as he asked hoarsely, Are you sure it's me? As he spoke, he glanced proudly at Chu Tianfeng. F***CK. Chu Tianfeng felt a little aggrieved. He was confident that his appearance, family background, figure, and talent in cultivation would not lose to Qin Xiuma. Moreover, he was now in high spirits and full of vitality. Unlike Qin Xiuma, who had not fully recovered and was still sick. Why did Meng Qi choose this guy and not me? Yes, Meng Qi answered casually. He took out a porcelain bottle from his storage bag and handed it to Qin Xiuma. Sprinkle it on your body. What is this? Just in case I get hurt by the divine devouring vines, Meng Qi explained as he turned around and continued walking forward. Chu Tianfeng took a step forward and walked side by side with her. He whispered to her, Can he do it? Don't waste all our efforts.
What are you talking about?
Qin Xiuma had already taken off his outer robe, revealing his upper body. He was severely injured when he was transcending the tribulation. In order to avoid being hunted down by his former close friend, he had escaped all the way from the southern border where his sect was located. He had stayed at the bottom of the cold pond in Cool Breeze Valley for a long time. His bronze-colored, healthy skin was still a little sickly pale at this moment. However, he was still young after all, so his recovery was still acceptable. His upper body, without a trace of fat, looked tight and tall. Qin Xiuma walked beside Meng Qi. While sprinkling the powder on himself, he whispered, Is this okay? Meng Qi looked at him indifferently. His eyes were clear without any ripples. She turned to Su Junmo and asked, Is this okay? Su Junmo's eyes flashed. Is that okay?
He didn't know what to say.
Meng Qi's eyes were clear and magnanimous. Obviously, he had no thoughts about Qin Xiuma. But did she know? White tigers were relatively rare in the demon realm. Once they found a partner, they would be loyal to a single heaven demon royal for life. Their possessiveness was absolutely outstanding in the three realms of human, demon, and demon. Su Junmo pondered what Meng Qi meant. She didn't have any feelings for Qin Xiuma, but she obviously thought that he was a beauty. If His Majesty knew, TSK. Su Junmo couldn't help but shudder. Su Junmo. Su Junmo? He was so engrossed in his thoughts that Meng Qi had to call him a few times before he recovered.
What?
You, be more careful. Pay attention to the tracks on the road. Meng Qi stared at him for a moment. This Su Junmo seemed to have become strange ever since Hua Jiangfu. His gaze kept moving between her and Qin Xiuma. It really wasn't normal for him to be so quiet even when he was far away from the crowd. Oh, okay. Su Junmo nodded and started to seriously observe the surroundings. The four were all Xiuzha, and their steps were not slow. They quickly left Hua Jiangfu behind and entered the depths of the forest. It was hard for the sunlight to shine through the leaves, and the surroundings gradually became dark. Small dots of light danced in the forest. The forest was silent except for the rustling of leaves in the wind and the chirping of insects and birds. Su Junmo suddenly sped up and walked towards a large tree not far ahead. This is... He reached out and wiped a narrow mark on the tree trunk. He turned and called to Qin Xiuma. Come and see. Sword energy. Qin Xiuma was a dual cultivator of sword arts and sword arts. His life bond weapon was a sword. He went forward and saw the 7 or 8 marks on the tree trunk were sword energy. How is he compared to you? Su Junmo asked. Qin Xiuma held his breath. He's a Yuanying Xiuzha. He emphasized, his sword arts are not as good as mine, but his cultivation is higher. So it's like this. Su Junmo nodded. He looked down at the ground and bent down to pick up a dried leaf. The leaf was yellow, and there was a dark brown drop of blood on it. Luckily, Su Junmo's ears were sharp and he immediately saw the dried blood on this little leaf. He put the leaf to his nose and sniffed. It's red fox. Su Junmo laughed coldly. These people had been really arrogant recently. It seemed that many people could not control themselves after Master's presence disappeared from the Yao world. Let me see. Meng Qi went forward to take the leaf. The small drop of brown blood had already dried up. She flipped over the dried leaf and looked. She said in a low voice, "This is also caused by sword energy." Meng Qi raised her head as she spoke. The leaves on the leafy tree were still green. The leaf in her hand looked complete, but the color was yellow. So domineering. Meng Qi murmured. She had seen this kind of sword energy before, or rather, this kind of Ling energy. It didn't just injure people, it also cut off their vitality. The master of the sword energy could absorb Ling energy from the Xiuzha and all things that they injured to recover themselves. When fighting against this kind of enemy, the other was almost invincible and very difficult to deal with. Meng Qi's mind moved, and something flashed through her mind. But that thought flashed past her mind, and before she could grasp anything, it had already disappeared. What is it? Qin Xiuma asked. Nothing. Meng Qi shook her head and knocked on her head. Let's be careful. She turned and looked around. It seems that someone has already been here. This bloodstain. She used her finger to lightly wipe it. It should have been left here 4 hours ago. Huajiang Mansion's Xiuzha Alliance has issued a mission to kill these Yao Xiuzha that sneak across the border and carry divine devouring vines in exchange for Lingstones. There will definitely be many Xiuzha participating. Su Junmo seemed to have regained some energy. Let's hurry. Okay. Meng Qi nodded. She thought of that Ji Wen Yuan. There should be many Xiuzha like this. Now that they had found the right direction, the 4 of them continued to walk forward. After walking for about 10 minutes, they arrived at a relatively open space. The surrounding forest was still dense, and they could not see the end of it. Along the way, they could see the bloodstains left behind by Scarlet Fox. Occasionally, they would see the sword energy that they had seen before. Let's do it here. Meng Qi looked around. I'll stay here to set up the array. You guys go and lure the enemies. No. Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiuma said in unison. I'll stay and accompany you. No need. Meng Qi shook her head. Even if I encounter a 4th stage demon, I can still hold on for at least 5 minutes. You guys can rush back in time. That won't do. Chu Tianfeng was anxious. What if they all swarm us? Then I can still hold on for 5 minutes, Meng Qi said with certainty. She had once used the 4 extremes array to change the array to stop the enemy. If the other party was a 7th-stage or 8th-stage nascent soul cultivator, then she really might not be able to hold on for 5 minutes. If it was a demon, she could do it.
No.
Su Junmo also interrupted. I'll stay. If it was really the 4 extremes array, those stupid and bad scarlet foxes would not even need to enter the array. They would be so scared that they would not dare to move for a long time. But what if Meng Qi was bragging? What if she didn't know the 4 extremes array of the heavenly demons at all, but another array with the same name? If something really happened to her, wouldn't his lord tear him apart alive? He did not dare to take the risk. I can really do it myself. Meng Qi felt helpless in her heart. She also knew that her cultivation level was too low, so it was hard for her to convince others. Moreover, she had other ideas. If the scarlet foxes were really nearby and saw that she was alone, they would immediately pounce on her. In any case, we can't let you stay alone, Chu Tianfeng said directly. You pick one to stay behind and the other 2 go find them. Meng Qi. Her gaze swept across the faces of the 3 people. Their expressions were extremely firm. It was rare for them to stand on the same side. Chu Tianfeng and the others did not even argue with Su Junmo. The talkative fox was eliminated first. If Qin Xiuma wanted to lure the enemy, then young Palace Master Chu. Meng Qi looked at Chu Tianfeng and said decisively, I'll have to trouble you to stage. Okay. Chu Tianfeng was extremely happy. He raised his eyebrows and the corners of his lips curled up. He stood beside Meng Qi and waved at the other 2. You guys go quickly. Don't waste time, lest that sword cultivator steal Meng Qi's business. Qin Xiuma. He and Su Junmo looked at each other, then turned around and walked into the forest side by side. Meng Qi watched the 2 of them leave. She took out materials from her storage bag and began to set up an array in the open space. This was one of the variations of the 4 extremes array. Because it was used to trap enemies and protect their lives, when her master taught her, he forced her to memorize it thoroughly. It was no exaggeration to say that as long as there were enough materials, Meng Qi could set up this array completely even with her eyes closed. She grabbed the materials needed to set up the array and began to busy herself in the open space. Her thin and slender figure was like a diligent sparrow. She diligently drew the formation while skillfully throwing the materials to the various points of the array. The 4 extremes array itself was very complicated, but the first variation of the array wasn't. Meng Qi was a foundation-building cultivator. She could draw a complete array even if she exhausted her spirit energy. In the beast house, little Qi lay there lazily. No one could tell what she was thinking from her blue eyes. It could see what Meng Qi was doing. It watched the slender figure quickly draw arrays in the open space. After every array, Meng Qi had to stop and wait for her spirit energy to recover. The 4 extremes array, little Qi's expression was numb. This was the secret of the Sky Demon White Tiger clan. It was far less precious than the star array of the White Tiger clan, but knowing the 4 extremes array meant that Meng Qi was recognized as a member of the Sky Demon White Tiger clan. Of course, it was natural that Meng Qi, who knew the star array, would also know the 4 extremes array. But who had taught her this? The range seemed to become smaller and smaller. Other than herself, there were only 4 people in the clan who knew the 4 extremes array. Granduncle and the elder had already retired from worldly affairs and hadn't left the Yao world for thousands of years. It clearly wasn't them. Then, was it her cousin or her uncle? Little Qi's eyes narrowed slightly as she watched Meng Qi work diligently in the open space. Soon, she had set up 7 or 8 variations of the 4 extremes array on the small open space. They almost covered the entire open space. Little Qi was so angry, she almost laughed. This was the Sky Demon White Tiger's great enemy trapping array. If a powerful person set it up, it could trap any being in the 3 realms. In the past, the Sky Demon White Tiger had dominated the world. When the 3 realms heard the name of the 4 extremes array, they would tremble and flee. Did she set it up just to trap those little red foxes? Then she could earn spirit stones. Fine. Meng Qi was also earning spirit stones for herself. Little Qi's furry claws gently rubbed on the ground. He was still a little annoyed. She's here. Chu Tianfeng, who had been guarding at the side, suddenly looked into the distance with a flicker in his eyes. He quickly walked to Meng Qi's side and raised his hand to form a seal. A circle of blue flames instantly ignited around them, protecting the entire open space.
Hee hee.
Delicate laughter came from all directions. In the midst of the laughter, an extremely enchanting and charming woman's voice sounded.
I'm so scared. Bang.
The blue flames suddenly dimmed. Chu Tianfeng let out a muffled groan and took a step back. His face turned pale. Meng Qi held a handful of 7th-grade spirit stones in her hand. There were at least 200 or 300 of them. She held her breath and stood beside Chu Tianfeng. Then, she flicked a small firework. The firework flew into the sky and exploded. This was the communication tool that Su Junmo gave them. After seeing the firework, they would return quickly.
Io.
Amidst the delicate laughter, the scarlet fox girl in a red dress walked out. What a beautiful little sister. Big sister likes you. She raised her slender hand, and a thick divine devouring vine rose up and pointed directly at Chu Tianfeng. Little sister, come with big sister. Big sister will treat you well. The men here are all scoundrels. Don't fall for their tricks. The scarlet fox girl looked at Meng Qi with a smile. Her eyes wandered around, and she looked very charming. Ayu Shuxiang. Calm, get lost. Chu Tianfeng was furious. He raised his hand, and flames soared into the sky and pounced towards the scarlet fox girl.
Io.
The scarlet fox girl smiled and dodged. Her originally beautiful face looked even more charming under the illumination of the flames. She smiled and looked at Meng Qi with her charming eyes. Little sister, look at them. They only know how to shout and kill. They are too boorish. They are not worthy of you. Come with big sister. Chapter 53. Meng Qi seemed to be frightened by the red-clothed woman. She hurriedly hid behind Chu Tianfeng and quickly poked her head out to take a look at the woman. When her eyes met the red-clothed woman's, she hurriedly looked away and whispered, "Who are you?"
I
won't go with you." She looked delicate, timid, and extremely pitiful, which was very suitable for her identity as a foundation establishment cultivator. Chu Tianfeng had just seen her diligently setting up Dharma arrays in the open space with his own eyes, and he also knew how she planned to earn spirit stones. He had seen Meng Qi's calm and collected appearance countless times, so he was really not used to her current appearance. For some reason, when he saw her like this, Chu Tianfeng actually felt a chill down his spine. He knew that Meng Qi was trying to trick people for spirit stones.
No.
Een demon. Little sister. The red-clothed woman smiled sweetly. She waved her hand lightly, and Chu Tianfeng's circle of flames completely disappeared, leaving not even a wisp of smoke behind. The red-clothed woman took a step forward, and the divine devouring vine beside her raised its head and coiled around her, as if it was sticking out its tongue. When Meng Qi saw this, she shrank behind Chu Tianfeng again and only poked her head out to look at the woman. "He can't protect you." The red-clothed woman pursed her lips, and the smile in her eyes deepened. As if to prove her words, she took a few more steps forward and waved her hand again. More than 10 shadows instantly pounced on Chu Tianfeng and Meng Qi, who were standing in the middle of the open space. "Even the Dharma arrays you painstakingly set up just now can't do anything to me," the red-clothed woman said with a smile. She had been following Meng Qi for a while, so she naturally saw what she had done just now. However, she was a foundation establishment cultivator, and she did not use any Dharma treasures. Even if the other party set up an inescapable net, she was not afraid. When the red-clothed woman said this, she looked at Meng Qi and Chu Tianfeng's expressions with satisfaction. Meng Qi clearly saw that the other party was still several zhang away from him. In the blink of an eye, that soft and slender hand had already brushed past her cheek. His slightly cold and slender fingers carried a faint fragrance of flowers. As soon as the fragrance entered his nose, Meng Qi felt dizzy. Her body swayed, and the woman in red smiled even more happily. "Don't worry, Big Sister will definitely treat you well. I like pretty and cute girls the most, especially when you're acting like this." She leaned closer as she spoke, completely ignoring Chu Tianfeng. She took a deep breath beside Meng Qi's neck and said, "The truth." This was the second time that the woman in red had mysteriously approached Meng Qi. Her movements were extremely nimble. She suddenly came close and then suddenly went far away, all in the blink of an eye. However, this time, Meng Qi suddenly threw out all the spirit stones in his hand. The sparkling and translucent spirit stones instantly flew towards all the arrays in the open space. Meng Qi had practiced this technique no less than 1,000 times. The four extremes formation that her master taught her was mainly used to trap enemies, especially those with a much higher cultivation level than her. At this time, the time it took to inhale and exhale might save her life. Not only did he urge Meng Qi to memorize the array by heart, but as long as the materials were complete, he could set it up in a flash. Moreover, he especially taught her this technique and watched her practice it repeatedly so that she could instantly sprinkle the spirit stones where she needed to and activate the array. The woman in red was only startled for a moment, but she quickly smiled happily. She was only a foundation-building cultivator, this is? Before the woman in red could finish her thought, her expression instantly changed. The open space that had been incomparably calm a moment ago suddenly lit up with fluorescent light, shooting straight into the sky and trapping her in the center. The woman in red was bewildered, and the dozen or so subordinates that she had summoned changed their expressions. They were also trapped in the array. "How can you?" The woman in red suddenly looked towards Meng Qi, but the other party had already pulled Chu Tianfeng's arm. Under his protection, they quickly retreated. She could only see two silhouettes surrounded by flames, landing directly outside the array. "Stop right there." The red-clothed woman's expression changed drastically. Her pleasant smile had completely disappeared. She stared at Meng Qi and asked sternly, "How can you know this array?" As the woman in red spoke, her long sleeves fluttered, and she attacked the array. She wanted to immediately break out of the array, catch this little foundation-building cultivator, and interrogate him. She was too careless. Previously, when she saw him setting up the array, she thought there were only a few arrays that foundation-building cultivators knew, and she didn't care about any of them. Unexpectedly, the woman in red had just taken a step forward when a green gas gushed out. In an instant, apart from the light of the spirit stones, there was only the light green gas left in the open space. The green gas had a pungent smell. Just by smelling it, one could tell it wasn't anything good. "Hold your breath." The woman in red's gaze turned cold, and she coldly ordered her subordinates, "Stay where you are and don't move." She wasn't afraid of this little foundation-building cultivator's poison. Even if the other party, before the woman in red could finish her thoughts, she suddenly groaned. Although her subordinates obeyed her order and didn't dare to move, they all looked dazed and frightened. All of a sudden, their faces were covered with bees. Even the woman in red was no exception. There were too many bees, and they were so dense that they covered the sky and the earth. They almost turned the array in the open space into solid objects. When the bees stung them, they immediately turned into smoke and disappeared. However, the pain was real. In just a moment, the faces of all the beast cultivators who followed the woman in red were covered with red packets. What was even more terrifying was that there were too many bees, and they were squeezing around. Many of them even crawled into their sleeves or stung them through their outer robes. Most of them couldn't sting them through their clothes. However, there were always a few that could really sting them. In addition, the bees crawled into their sleeves and collars. In the blink of an eye, all the beast cultivators who followed the woman in red rolled on the ground and began to wail in pain. Good. Chu Tianfeng felt his back go numb. He didn't even know how to describe the scene in front of him. His ears were filled with buzzing sounds, and his eyes were filled with a dense swarm of bees flying back and forth. He subconsciously turned his head to look at Meng Qi, only to find that the girl was also staring at the array. So scary, Meng Qi murmured, but it's also very powerful. *CK. Chu Tianfeng wanted to roast her. Big sister, didn't you know it was this powerful before you used it? 4 extremes array. It's the 4 extremes array. The woman in red screamed. Her sharp voice instantly pierced through the clouds. How can you? Who the hell are you? She cast a spell, no longer caring about her subordinates who were still rolling on the ground and wailing, and barely managed to protect herself. The transparent barrier separated the densely packed bees. If she was too close, she could still see them crawling around on top of the barrier. The woman in red was shocked and scared, completely panicking. The 4 extremes array was too intimidating in the demon realm. In fact, if she tried a little, she would find that with her realm, she could completely break out of the array in half an hour at most. But she didn't dare to move at all. Countless emotions flashed through the woman in red's eyes, and she looked at Meng Qi with inexplicable horror. This young female cultivator, who was only in the foundation-building realm, looked so calm and composed. Her gaze was as clear as a cold mountain spring. Separated by the constantly flying and crawling bees, the woman in red felt that the elegant girl in front of her was so terrifying. Gradually, she even overlapped with a few great celestial demons in the demon realm whom she didn't even dare to mention behind her back. She murmured and opened her mouth, feeling that her knees were so weak that she almost couldn't stand. Those great celestial demons were all the most outstanding adults in the celestial demon White Tiger royal family. Especially that one. The woman in red shuddered and didn't dare to continue thinking. She suddenly knelt down on one knee, and her voice became hoarse. Sir, I'm willing to follow you from now on. Please spare my life.
My
Lord. Chu Tianfeng was dumbfounded. He was a golden core cultivator. Although he was a Dharma cultivator and didn't know much about arrays, he could still see that the array set up by Meng Qi was very powerful. However, this celestial demon in front of him, who was at least a rank for demon, only needed to deal with these arrays like how she dealt with his defensive Dharma spells. At most, she could break out of the array in half an hour. Meng Qi narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at the woman in red. This woman in red was the leader of this group of demons. Seeing how easily she dealt with Chu Tianfeng, she was at least a rank for demon. And the divine devouring vine beside her, she was the most valuable spirit stone. Meng Qi spent a lot of money buying array materials. If she didn't catch a few rank for demons, she was worried that she wouldn't be able to recoup her capital. However, Su Junmo wasn't back yet, so she couldn't force this girl to risk her life. Meng Qi looked up at her. What's your name? I'm Xigong Xing, the woman in red said respectfully. Xigong Xing. Before Meng Qi could continue speaking, Su Junmo's voice suddenly came from the tree behind them. You actually dared to cross the line. Did Xigong Yen get killed by the demon ancestors before he could tell you? Su Junmo. Xigong Xing suddenly looked up, and the last bit of doubt in her eyes completely disappeared. Su Junmo was actually following this foundation establishment cultivator. What was there to doubt? Xigong Xing immediately knelt down and prostrated herself on the ground. She said respectfully to Meng Qi, Please have mercy, sir. Su Junmo. He choked and glanced across the entire field. *CK. He also wanted to kneel. It really was the 4 extreme formation. Su Junmo had followed his master for a long time. Although he wasn't skilled in formations, he had seen and heard a lot. The 4 extreme formation was the most famous killing formation in the Yao world. The so-called four extremes corresponded to the four cardinal directions: east, west, north, and south. 10,000 years ago, the ancestor of the Sky Yao, White Tiger clan, used the four extreme formation to fight against four great Sky Yao of the same realm as him. The four great Sky Yao encountered different situations after entering the four extreme formation. They were either trapped in place for a long time without being able to break through, or they were chased by countless sharp weapons, or tens of millions of Yao cultivators were forced to fight to the death with those who entered the formation, or tens of thousands of poisonous insects of the Yao world attacked and trapped those who entered the formation. After that battle, the name of the Sky Yao White Tiger and the four extreme formation shook the entire Yao world and allowed them to secure their position as one of the royal families of the Sky Yao. Yawenba. Net later generations of Yao lords were all born from the Sky Yao White Tiger clan. More and more members of the Yao World Council of Elders were from the Sky Yao White Tiger clan. If not for the fact that they didn't have many descendants, their numbers would be far less than other Sky Yao. Perhaps the entire Yao world, or even the entire ninth heaven, would belong to them. Su Junmo understood a little why Sikong Xing was so fearful. 10,000 years ago, one of the great Sky Yao killed by his masters for extreme formation was the Crimson Fox's ancestor. After killing the Crimson Fox's ancestor, the White Tiger's ancestor held the Yao Lord token and demoted the Crimson Fox from a Sky Yao noble to an ordinary demon. Since then, the Crimson Fox race had almost collapsed. Otherwise, they wouldn't have secretly nurtured the divine devouring vine. Su Junmo could actually imagine how fearful the Crimson Fox race's descendants were of the four extreme formation. He just didn't expect that Sikong Xing, a woman who used her beauty to be so domineering and fearless in the Yao world, would be so fearful. He slowly walked to Meng Qi's side and looked at Sikong Xing, who was trembling on the ground. He couldn't help but cough softly. "Are you going to let her go?" "She's a fourth-stage demon," Meng Qi said calmly. "The divine devouring vine beside her is of the same value as her." Cough, cough, cough. Su Junmo was stunned for a while before he realized what Meng Qi was saying. Sikong Xing was even more so. The entire Yao was stunned. She subconsciously looked up. The array gradually quieted down, and the bees also slowly disappeared. Only a few were still flying slowly in the air. Not to mention Sikong Xing, even her subordinates were no longer afraid. However, they were still lying on the ground softly, as if all their strength had been sucked out. Their spirit seas were empty, and the red and swollen bumps on their faces and bodies were still painful and itchy. Everyone tacitly lay still, afraid that if they moved, something would happen again. "My lord." Sikong Xing looked at Meng Qi blankly. "I'm indeed a fourth-stage demon cultivator. I'm willing to sacrifice my soul and be loyal to you from now on. I'll serve you and never dare to disobey you." Cough, cough. Sikong Mo couldn't stand it anymore. Compared to Sikong Yen, he didn't hate Sikong Xing as much. She was a little domineering, but as far as he knew, she had never hurt a cultivator from the three realms before. In the demon realm, she had the intention of helping the weak and getting rid of the strong. She was quite nice to female Yao cultivators. Many female Yao cultivators who were bullied were willing to seek her help. He wanted to help Sikong Xing and reminded her. "When did you come to the three realms?" "I just arrived today." Sikong Xing reacted and lowered her body again. "I've never hurt any cultivator, and I don't plan to hurt any cultivators. Father sent me here to find Mother, who left us to the three realms 100 years ago." Meng Qi. Su Junmo looked at Meng Qi. "She's indeed not a guy like Sikong Yen. She can be trusted." He paused. During this period of time with Meng Qi, Su Junmo felt that he had grasped some of Meng Qi's temper. "Speaking of which, you're quite similar to her. She's also very nice to female cultivators in the demon realm. When some female cultivators who were bullied came to her, she would always stand up for them. She's quite famous among female cultivators in the demon realm. Meng Qi didn't speak. Su Junmo said again, "Aren't you also very nice to female cultivators? You're quite ruthless to male cultivators when you ask for spirit stones, but very generous to female cultivators." Is that so? Meng Qi didn't think so herself. She used to treat everyone equally, but now she was just trying to prevent herself from being unlucky. Moreover, Sikong Xing's father is quite different from the rest of the Crimson Fox race. He's aloof from worldly affairs and is a famous tycoon in the Crimson Fox race. She's also the only daughter in the family, so she has a lot of spirit stones. Su Junmo hurriedly added. As he spoke, he gave Sikong Xing a look. Sikong Xing was stunned and still couldn't react. Her father was indeed famous for being aloof from worldly affairs in the Crimson Fox race. However, the demon realm revered power. Countless people mocked the father and daughter in front of and behind their backs, saying that it was useless for them to lie on a pile of spirit stones. They were the biggest idiots in the Crimson Fox race. Su Junmo sighed softly and could only explain. He pointed at Meng Qi and then at Sikong Xing and the subordinates behind her. She's going to capture you and exchange you for spirit stones. You and your divine devouring vine are worth 200 grade 8 spirit stones. Your subordinates are worth 200 grade 7 spirit stones each. Sikong Xing felt a wave of dizziness in her head. Because her father only liked to earn spirit stones, she was also mocked by the Crimson Fox race since she was young. So this lord also likes spirit stones? Sikong Xing didn't know why, but she suddenly felt a warm feeling in her heart. It was as if the grievances and mockery she had suffered since she was young were nothing. Someone who knew the Four Extremes array and could make Su Junmo follow him. Such a powerful lord also likes spirit stones. Sikong Xing immediately took out a brocade pouch from her storage bag and held it in her hands respectfully. My lord, here are 100 grade 9 spirit stones. I'm willing to use them to buy myself and my subordinates. When she spoke up to hear, she lightly bit her lower lip as she thought about Sikong Xing's words and explained. Actually, these people aren't the servant's subordinates. They're all female demon cultivators that this servant saved. They're willing to follow this servant because they're grateful to this servant. Then, she respectfully said to Meng Qi, they're all here to help me. My lord, please spare them. Meng Qi, Su Junmo continued to persuade him, Sikong Xing is indeed not bad. Just let her go. Meng Qi's gaze landed on Sikong Xing's face. I'll take the divine devouring vine away. I can let you all go. Thank you, my lord. Sikong Xing prostrated on the ground again. Those female demon cultivators who followed her all struggled to get up and kneeled. Thank you, my lord. You don't have to call me my lord. Meng Qi waved his hand. You don't have to call yourself my servant. I don't need followers. I believe in Su Junmo. But in the future, don't bring the divine devouring vine to the Trichiliacosm. Yes. Sikong Xing lowered her head. I understand. She looked up at Meng Qi and took out another brocade pouch. Then, she waved her hand and put away all the divine devouring vines that belonged to her and the other female demon cultivators. Then, she lowered her head and held the 2 brocade pouches in her hands. Su Junmo waved his sleeves and took the 2 brocade pouches and handed them to Meng Qi. Meng Qi did not stand on ceremony. She really needed spirit stones now, so she kept them all in her own storage bag. My lord.
Ah.
Ms. Meng. As soon as Sikong Xing spoke, she remembered that Meng Qi had said that she could not call her my lord. Call me Meng Qi, Meng Qi said calmly. It's okay, Meng Qi said. Names are used to address people. There's no such thing as respect.
Yes.
Sikong Xing looked at Meng Qi, and a glint flashed across her eyes. Can I be called Meng Qi, like Su Junmo? Meng Qi. Anyway, Chu Tianfeng was also calling her that now, so she did not care. She nodded. Meng Qi. Sikong Xing then continued. I'll let them go back, but can I stay in the Trichiliocosm? I'm here to find my mother. My father missed my mother too much and hurt his Tao foundation. His cultivation level has not improved for 100 years. I'm afraid. She lowered her head sadly, revealing her slender and fair neck. I want to find my mother and ask her to go back and see my father. So, Meng-Chi, please let me stay in the Trichiliocosm. Meng-Chi could only look at Su Junmo again. Su Junmo nodded slowly and sighed. Her father is also infatuated. Okay. Meng-Chi nodded. Then Meng-Chi. Sikong-Shing smiled happily. Her face was stunning, and she was dressed in red makeup. When she smiled, she was born with the charm and brilliance of the Crimson Fox clan. She was extremely charming. Meng-Chi was a little stunned. Can I follow you? Sikong-Shing asked carefully. I don't know where to find my mother, and I don't know anyone in the Trichiliocosm. I don't know anything, so can I stay by your side? Then you have to make a soul oath. Su Junmo was still worried about the Crimson Fox clan. When you're in the Trichiliocosm, you will never hurt Meng-Chi.
Yes.
Sikong-Shing immediately put her index finger and thumb on her chest. I swear on my soul that I will never hurt Meng-Chi in this life. If I violate this oath, the god ancestor will abandon me, and the light of the stars will never shine on me. After Sikong-Shing made the oath, she stood up happily. Su Junmo shook his head and waved his hand. Her subordinates were all sent back to the demon realm in an instant. Sikong-Shing looked around and looked at the item in Su Junmo's hand. She did not say anything. It was normal for Su Junmo to follow and protect a lord who knew the 4 extreme arrays, even if he was a foundation establishment cultivator. Meng-Chi. Sikong-Shing took the initiative to ask, where are we going now? Her dress was like fire, and her eyes were like stars. Her face was stunning. To be able to give birth to such a beautiful daughter, her mother must also be a beauty. Meng-Chi stared at her for a while. He thought about all the people he had met in his previous life, but he could not find a female cultivator he knew who could give birth to such a beautiful daughter. We still have to catch the demon cultivator with the divine devouring vine, Meng-Chi said. It was still early. If they could catch one more, they could exchange it for 100 spirit stones. Although he knew that it was not very possible, the auction house might only be short of a few hundred spirit stones. I'll help you, Sikong-Shing immediately said. The one leading the team here this time is the grandson of the 7th elder, Sikong Changlai. She snorted and said disdainfully, when he was in the demon realm, he often bullied the weak and snatched beautiful female cultivators. Among the girls that Su Junmo sent back, 2 of them were snatched by him. After a night of pampering, he casually threw them to his subordinates. Luckily, I saw them and brought them back in time. Otherwise, they might have been tortured to death. Sikong-Shing became angrier as she spoke. But I couldn't save them in time. I don't know how many girls were ruined by him. Meng-Chi, let's catch him, castrate him, and exchange him for spirit stones. I'll help you. Okay. Meng-Chi nodded and asked, he's also a rank 4? Yes, Sikong-Shing said, and he has many subordinates. At least 40 to 50 of them. Among them, 6 or 7 are just rank 4. The rest are all rank 3. Meng-Chi quickly calculated. Okay, let's catch them. Let's use the 4 extremes formation. Sikong-Shing said. Sikong Changlai will definitely be scared to tears. She snorted. He often claims to be a direct descendant of Ancestor Fox. The 4 extremes formation will definitely frighten him even more. Okay, Meng-Chi said. I'll fix the formation. As she spoke, she turned to look at Su Junmo and Chu Tianfeng. Then, she looked at Qin Xiuma, who had just slowly walked out from the shadows and was still somewhat wary of Sikong-Shing Meng-Chi. Let them go find Sikong Changlai. Sikong-Shing said, it's enough for me to stay behind and protect you. None of the 3 of them can do it. Meng Qi didn't immediately agree. She took out the brocade pouch that Xigong Xing had just given her from her storage pouch and said to Qin Xioma, according to what we said before, we'll divide the spirit stones according to contribution. Just now, you were the bait to lure the enemy. In addition to the previous debt, I'll write off it and give you 5 more spirit stones. Meng Qi said, Qin Xioma, once this matter is over, I'll find you to continue the unfinished business. You don't have to stay behind now. Chu Tianfeng looked at Qin Xioma gloatingly and felt a wave of satisfaction in his heart. Who told you to pretend to be poor and owe money? Now you've been driven away, right? You deserve it.
Oh.
Qin Xioma's expression didn't change. I'm also short of money. I also want to stay and earn some spirit stones. He never thought that one day he would actually say something like, I want to earn spirit stones, without batting an eyelid. Chapter 54. Qin Xioma ignored Chu Tianfeng's disdainful gaze and continued faintly, didn't she just say that there are 40 or 50 people on the other side, including several 4th-rank demon cultivators? One more person means one more chance of success. In the end, it's fine to divide the spirit stones according to contribution. He calmly finished speaking and temporarily endured Xigong Xing's words that he couldn't do it. That's fine. Meng Qi nodded. She didn't care about the eye contact between Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xioma at all, and walked straight towards the array. Xigong Xing was standing beside Su Junmo at this moment, watching in shock as Meng Qi took out materials from the storage bag and set up 2 new arrays in the open space. Her movements were very familiar, as if the 4 extreme arrays, which made the demon world tremble with fear, were her innate instinct. Not only Xigong Xing but even Su Junmo was a little dazed. So, Xigong Xing murmured, who exactly is she? When did the Sky Demon White Tiger clan have such a young and beautiful lady? How did I? She was suddenly shocked, and her beautiful eyes widened as she turned to look at Su Junmo. Su Junmo looked back at Xigong Xing seriously and slowly nodded. What you're thinking now is probably the correct answer. Xigong Xing looked down at her hand. I pinched her cheek. She was a little dazed. Su Junmo was by her side, and she knew the 4 extreme arrays. If her guess wasn't wrong, this cultivator, who looked very young, should be that lady's lover? Just now, he had pinched her cheek. Xigong Xing raised his head and continued to look at Meng Qi anxiously. The blue figure was busy in the open space and retreated after a moment. Let's divide the work. Meng Qi put away the rest of the materials and turned to look at Xigong Xing. How many people are there in total?
Yes.
Xigong Xing was in a daze for a moment before coming back to his senses. She thought for a moment and said seriously, Xigong Chonglai, and the 3 people who often follow him are all at the 4th rank. Other than that, his father had also sent 2 people to protect him. Those 2 people should be rank 4 or rank 7 or 8. In addition to his personal bodyguard captains, there are a total of 8 4th-rank martial artists. Meng Qi nodded, a little embarrassed. 8 rank 4s. On their side, Xigong Xing only had 2 rank for martial artists, and he himself was only a rank 4. If they were to really go all out, their strength on paper was indeed much weaker. However, Xigong Chonglai and his 3 companions are very fond of beauties. Moreover, he is extremely arrogant and conceited. He calls himself the #1 expert of the same generation as Scarlet Fox. Xigong Xing calmed down. She had disliked Xigong Chonglai since a long time ago. The demon clan's kinship was very thin to begin with. Xigong Chonglai had once relied on the fact that his father was an elder, his family had quite a bit of authority in the Scarlet Fox clan, and he had a very powerful great demon backing him. He had wanted to humiliate Xigong Xing many times. Xigong Xing's cultivation base was not bad. Coupled with her quick wits, she was able to escape from his hands. She had long hated him to the core. Over the years, among the Scarlet Fox clan and the demon cultivators who belonged to the Scarlet Fox clan, countless female cultivators had fallen into Sikong Chonglai's hands. In the end, their fates were miserable. She could save two, but in the end, she could not save too many. Sikong Chonglai is very fond of beauties and is extremely proud. If we use beauties as bait, we can definitely make him lower his guard.
Yes.
Meng Qi nodded and looked towards Chu Tianfeng and the other two. Meng Qi. Sikong Xing followed her gaze and could not help but laugh. He likes girls.
Oh.
Meng Qi nodded. Here's what I'm thinking. I'll pretend to be injured by you guys and lure him to save us. Sikong Xing did not hide anything. With his personality, he'll definitely take the opportunity to come here and taunt me, telling me to listen to him obediently. At that time, we'll take the opportunity to capture them all in one fell swoop. She looked at the empty space. The Scarlet Fox clan is not good at formations. Even if he can see that there's a formation here, he won't be able to guess that. Sikong Xing shivered and did not even dare to mention the Four Extremes formation. It's such a powerful formation. As long as we can trap him for a moment, Su Junmo and I, along with these two, can attack together and kill at least 3 to 4 of their fourth ranks. This way, even if the rest of them escape in the chaos, they'll still be injured. That's a good idea. Meng Qi nodded. She walked towards the empty space. If that's the case, I can also make some changes to half of the formation. As she spoke, she began to move. Sikong Xing and Su Junmo could not help but look at each other. They were both true Yao cultivators. They had grown up listening to the legend of the White Tiger ancestor relying on the Four Extremes formation to maneuver unhindered. You'll get used to it. Su Junmo whispered to Sikong Xing. She knows a lot. Sikong Xing nodded. Do you really plan to stay in the 3,000 worlds and not go back? Su Junmo asked again. What about your father? I want to find my mother first. Sikong Xing said. She paused and looked at Su Junmo. Father said that the Star Lord token will soon reappear in the 9 heavens. Ever since His Majesty left the Yao realm, many forces have begun to stir. It's already a mess. When the time comes, the entire 9 heavens will be in chaos. Father won't be able to come to the 3,000 worlds. I know that he wants me to go to the 3,000 worlds to find my mother now because he doesn't want me to get involved in this war. Su Junmo didn't say anything. He was also full of doubts. His lord's personal guards were even trapped in the 7 heavens. Other than appearing in the sky beyond heaven, there was no trace of his lord anywhere else. Their sworn enemy obviously knew something and was completely unscrupulous now. He could imagine how chaotic the entire Yao realm was. Su Junmo didn't say anything, and Sikong Xing didn't continue to ask. She retracted her gaze and saw that Meng Qi had already set up 2 more formations. Then, she retreated to their side.
All right.
Meng Qi said, then let's do as we discussed. Sikong Xing, do you have a way to get Sikong Chonglai to come over?
Yes.
Sikong Xing nodded and took out a small silver bell. When the silver bell rings, it means that I'm in danger. Sikong Chonglai will definitely come to see me in a sorry state. The 3 of you go hide first, Meng Qi said to Su Junmo and the others. When the time comes, wait for my signal and attack at the same time. Our main targets are Sikong Chonglai and the 2 4th stage realm, 8 Yao cultivators. What about you? Chu Tianfeng, Qin Xioma, and even Su Junmo asked in unison. I'm going to stay in the formation. Otherwise, how can I activate it? Meng Qi said matter-of-factly.
No.
This time, the 4 of them actually spoke at the same time. Even Sikong Xing shook her head and objected. That's too dangerous. Sikong Chonglai is very powerful. If you're not careful, you might die at his hands. I won't. Meng Qi said, I'm only a foundation establishment cultivator and a female cultivator at that. If Sikong Chonglai was really as arrogant as Sikong Xing said, then he wouldn't take her seriously at all. That still won't do. Chu Tianfeng immediately objected. Who knows what he'll do? Yes. That won't do. Qin Xiuma also said. We'll leave at least one of us behind. Su Junmo immediately added. Si Gongxing, on the other hand, was quite happy. The other party said this because he completely believed in her and what she said, which was why he was so magnanimous. She raised the corner of her lips and smiled sweetly. Don't worry, there's still me. I'll protect Meng Qi. As she said this, she walked towards the center of the formation that Meng Qi had set up. Si Gongxing raised her hand and looked towards Meng Qi with her bright eyes. You can tie me up. As she said this, she raised her wrist. Meng Qi shook his head and sat down beside her. Si Gongxing happily sat beside her. She hugged her knees with both hands and looked at Qin Xiuma and the others, who wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Don't worry, she said. Although I'm from the Crimson Fox clan, my main cultivation method was taught to me by my master. He's from the Black Tortoise clan, so, as Si Gongxing spoke, she put her right index and middle fingers together and opened an oval-shaped barrier. The barrier wasn't big, and dark green light flashed. It looked like a thick turtle shell. Su Junmo was speechless, which was rare. You don't cultivate the Crimson Fox clan's cultivation method? My father said that living is the most important thing for a demon to live. So when I was very young, he begged his good friend to teach me the Black Tortoise clan's cultivation method. He also found many cultivation methods that can temper the body for me to learn. I don't even know how many medicinal pills I've eaten. Even if Sikong Chonglai suddenly goes crazy, I guarantee that I can protect Meng Qi. Sikong Xing said, at least I can hold on until you guys come back. Qin Xiuma didn't say anything. He raised his hand and summoned his natal long sword. The sword was sharp, and it suddenly attacked the tortoiseshell-like barrier as fast as lightning. With a soft clang, the barrier easily withstood the attack, and the light was not damaged at all. Chu Tianfeng flicked 3 flames from his finger. The orange flames suddenly approached the barrier and only extinguished after a while. Sikong Xing sat next to Meng Qi with a smile, hugging her knees. She didn't feel anything at all. Impressive. Su Junmo didn't try. He was a heaven demon and knew how powerful the Black Tortoise clan was. He stretched out his finger and lightly flicked the barrier. Looks like you've learned a lot from the Black Tortoise clan. Not really. My master taught me for 12 years, and I've learned a lot of life-saving skills. Then let's go. Su Junmo was relieved. He still looked deeply at Sikong Xing and exchanged a look that only the two of them could understand. Then he called out to Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiuma. Sikong Chonglai has the help of the divine devouring vine, so it's easy for him to scout the surroundings. We'll each choose a place that we can rush back to within 15 minutes to hide. After Sikong Xing attracts Sikong Chonglai, we'll quickly return. After Su Junmo finished speaking, he waved his hand. The 3 of them each chose a direction and rushed away. Sikong Xing watched as they walked away. She raised her hand and withdrew the barrier. She smiled softly and said to Meng Qi, "Do those 2 like you?"
No.
Meng Qi said, "We're a team to earn spirit stones together." Sikong Xing chuckled, pursed his lips, and stopped talking. She actually wanted to say that it was a pity that Meng Qi was with that heaven demon, White Tiger. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a big deal to have a few more lovers. She softly hummed a tune. After about 5 minutes, she stretched out her hand and picked up the silver bell. The crisp sound of the bell could be heard.
Ding, ding, ding.
The sound wasn't loud, but Sikong Xing was very confident. Meng Qi didn't ask anything. She just took out a handful of 7-stage spirit stones and held them in her hand. Sikong Xing hummed a tune. With a tearing sound, she tore her red dress, revealing a fair and slender calf. Meng Qi. Sikong Xing smiled sweetly at her and then lay back down, ruffling her own hair in passing. She blinked at Meng Qi and stuck out her tongue. Sikong Chonglai is very lecherous. I used a little trick. Meng Qi also smiled. After interacting with her for a while, she didn't hate Sikong Xing at all. Although this demon girl's actions were slightly strange, she was always magnanimous. Her sparkling eyes wouldn't lie. Sure. Sikong Xing was also smiling at her. Halfway through her smile, her expression suddenly froze and became a little serious. He's here, she said in a low voice. Meng Qi saw that the smile on Sikong Xing's face instantly disappeared. She lay on the ground with messy hair, and her breathing seemed a little rapid. Her long dress was torn, and her fair calf was exposed to the air. She looked helpless and pitiful. Meng Qi's hand that was holding the spirit stones suddenly clenched. Amidst the rustling of the leaves behind her, the young man's voice was heard before he arrived. Isn't this little sister Xing? Amidst the frivolous address, the voice with obvious mockery was getting closer and closer. He was clearly far away just now, but in the blink of an eye, he seemed to be behind Meng Qi. There's also a little female cultivator. A folding fan fell on Meng Qi's shoulder. The handle of the fan lifted her chin and lifted her face.
Wrong.
It's a little beauty. Meng Qi looked up and saw the smiling face of a handsome man. It was just that the smile on the man's face was so frivolous that it made him look very greasy. He turned the handle of the fan and put it away. He looked at Sikong Xing, who was lying on the ground, with a smile. Little sister Xing won't tell me that you were caught by such a little foundation-building cultivator, right? Humph. Sikong Xing snorted softly. She was indeed caught by Meng Qi. There's also a formation. Sikong Chonglai swept his gaze around and laughed disdainfully. Little sister Xing has never been to the 3,000 realms and doesn't know how cunning the cultivators here are. I'm afraid you've been tricked by them, right? He didn't take Meng Qi seriously at all. He leaned over and used the folding fan to lift Sikong Xing's chin. I said earlier that I wanted little sister Xing to act with me and be my person, but you refused. Now you know who Big Brother is doing this for, right? Sikong Chonglai smiled ambiguously. His gaze followed Sikong Xing's pretty face and finally landed on her exposed calf. How pitiful! The little princess of our Crimson Fox race is being treated like this by those human cultivators who don't know how to be tender to the fairer sex. Sikong Chonglai sighed softly and leaned over to hug Sikong Xing's waist. With a pew sound, Sikong Xing raised her hand and struck towards Sikong Chonglai's chest. Sikong Chonglai leaned his body to the side and easily dodged her palm. He took a step back confidently with a disdainful smile on his face. I knew it. Little sister Xing wouldn't be so obedient. At this moment, the two people in charge of protecting Sikong Chonglai and the captain of his personal guards all fell behind him. It's fine. Sikong Chonglai waved his hand, and his divine devouring vine snaked over close to the ground. Little beauty is playing with me. Big Brother knows that you like to be tied up. Only then will you be happy and obedient, right? Sikong Chonglai laughed lewdly and wickedly. The people behind him also revealed a knowing smile. His 3 fair-weather friends, the other 3 Crimson Fox youths, also walked out from the forest and leisurely walked to his side. 2 beauties. One of the Crimson Fox youths licked his lips. Looks like everyone can have a good time today. Isn't this Sikong Xing's eldest daughter? She's usually very arrogant in the race. I've long wanted to taste this hot beauty. Not only you, the 49 brothers who followed young master here all want to have a taste. The captain of the personal guards also laughed. Ha ha ha. Proud laughter echoed in the empty space. Little sister Xing and this little beauty, come with me. Sikong Chonglai laughed and extended his hand towards Meng Qi and the rest. Don't make my brothers wait too long. You probably don't know, but men who wait too long and too impatiently will be very rude and will easily hurt the 2 beauties. Young master. One of the guards who was ordered by Sikong Chonglai's father to protect him looked around. Someone set up a formation here. A human cultivator's formation. Sikong Chanlai laughed disdainfully. What's there to fear? He was used to being arrogant in the Yao realm. He relied on his father to commit crimes and bully others in the Crimson Fox territory. After coming to the 3,000 worlds, none of the cultivators they met in the Huajiang Manor were their match. In Sikong Chanlia's eyes, human cultivators were no match for Yao cultivators. They only dared to hole up under the protection of the city's barrier. When his father and that lord found the passage to the Starfall Sea, the entire 3,000 worlds would be theirs. At that time, countless human beauties would be in his hands. Sikong Chanlia's gaze flickered and landed on Meng Qi's face. Today, he would let him have a taste of this seemingly elegant and cold little human beauty. Sikong Chanlai did not even look at Sikong Xing as he extended his hand towards Meng Qi. Meng Qi sat on the ground as if she had been scared silly. She stood there without dodging. She was silently counting. Sikong Chanlia's subordinates were walking out of the forest. 3, 6, 9, 47, 48, 49. When the last Crimson Fox clan member stepped into the range of the formation, Meng Qi suddenly rolled and dodged Sikong Chanlia's hand that was about to touch her cheek. She jumped up and threw out the spirit stones in her hand. The sparkling spirit stones instantly flew to her feet. The first formation lit up and was completely activated. In the blink of an eye, layers of light spread out along the formation she had drawn earlier. It happened so quickly that it seemed to have happened at the same time. The entire empty space lit up as all the formations were activated. Meng Qi pulled Sikong Xing back and stepped into the protective barrier she had set up earlier. Interesting. Sikong Chanlai stood there calmly as he looked at Meng Qi with a faint smile. Although I like delicate and charming beauties, a cold and thorny one has a different taste. As he spoke, he looked around casually. Even if I let you activate all the formations, you can't.
Huh.
The calmness on Sikong Chanlia's face instantly disappeared as he revealed the same shocked expression as Sikong Xing. This is the Four Extremes formation? His voice suddenly became sharp as his gaze shot towards Meng Qi like a sharp blade. Who are you? Sikong Xing sneered as she stood beside Meng Qi. Her red dress was like fire. Sikong Chanlai, you even recognize the Four Extremes formation. Who do you think she is? I don't believe it. Sikong Chanlia's expression changed as he suddenly shouted. So, what if it's the Four Extremes formation? He looked at Meng Qi with a grim smile. She's just a foundation establishment cultivator. Moreover, that person has already fallen into the Starfall Sea and her whereabouts are unknown. She can't even protect herself. Now, all we have to do is wait for the Demon Lord token to reappear, and the Demon Realm will change masters. I'm not afraid of him. Although he said this, his gaze still drifted around. Even if he comes personally, I'm not afraid either. Sikong Chanlai, has anyone ever told you that when you're talking tough, your teeth should never tremble, and your legs and hands shouldn't tremble so much? Sikong Xing mocked. Those who don't know might think something's wrong with you.
Humph.
Sikong Chanlai snorted coldly. You're stalling for time. Don't even think about it. As he spoke, he raised his hand. Including himself, the 8 fourth-stage demon cultivators on his side all moved. Meng Qi took a deep breath and waved his hand again, throwing out another handful of spirit stones. Green smoke emerged as a dense swarm of bees once again occupied the entire space. Sir, step back. Let the two of us do it. The 2 fourth-stage 8th realm demon cultivators sent by Sikong Chanlia's father stepped forward. The two of them took a deep breath as surging spiritual energy swept out in all directions. Those bees were instantly blown into a mess, unable to get close to them at all. Meng Qi let out a muffled groan. The difference in cultivation was too great. She also knew that she was pushing it too far. Previously, Sikong Xing was afraid in her heart. In addition, she didn't really want to become enemies with Meng Qi in the first place, so she admitted defeat. If they really fought head-on, Meng Qi wouldn't be Xigong Xing's opponent. Seeing the two guards like this, Xigong Changlai sneered and said, "What four extremes formation? So it's just this." He quickly calmed down and activated the spiritual energy in his body with his friends and subordinates at the same time. Surging spiritual energy spread out in all directions. The surrounding leaves seemed to be swept away by a gust of wind. The entire space was filled with sand and stones. Even the light of the formation dimmed by a lot. It looked like the formation would be completely destroyed in less than half an incense's time. A hint of anxiety flashed across Xigong Xing's face. She stood beside Meng Qi and glanced towards a forest. Xigong Chanlai laughed softly. "Waiting for reinforcements? I'm afraid it's too late." As he spoke, he leapt up with a long howl. The place where he was standing just now was pierced by countless sharp swords. That was another variation of the four extremes formation that Meng Qi had activated. Taking advantage of the chaos, he stabbed towards Xigong Chanlai. "Ugh," she suddenly groaned again. A trace of blood flowed down the corner of her lips. "Are you okay?" Meng Qi shook her head. She carelessly wiped the blood from the corner of her lips and threw out another handful of spirit stones. She was just about to forcibly activate the formation to launch another wave of attacks. It would be fine as long as she could delay until Su Junmo and the others returned. "Don't be afraid." A gentle and pleasant male voice suddenly sounded beside her ear. Meng Qi suddenly froze and subconsciously looked around. Apart from Xigong Xing, who was anxiously looking at her, there was no one around her. "What's wrong?" Xigong Xing hurriedly asked. "No." Meng Qi shook her head, thinking that she had misheard. Although that voice only said 2 words, it was so familiar. It was a voice that she had heard for 3 years. Even if it was a lifetime ago, she would never mistake it. She must have misheard, because she was too anxious. Meng Qi shook her head. This was not the time to be in a daze. She was just about to continue activating the formation when that voice sounded beside her ear again. "Let Xigong Xing use the Mystic Thunder Seal to protect you." Meng Qi paused and subconsciously said, "Mystic Thunder Seal. Xigong Xing used the Mystic Thunder Seal to protect me." Xigong Xing paused and drew an arc in the air with his fingers. Lightning flashed and protected Meng Qi. That voice sounded beside Meng Qi's ear again. "Hold a 9th rank spirit stone in your left hand."
Yes.
Meng Qi's voice was slightly hoarse. Without hesitation, she took out the spirit stone from her storage bag and held it in her hand. "Relax, don't think about anything. Don't worry about your right hand." That voice said again. "Okay?" Meng Qi's eyes were slightly hot. Her entire body was completely relaxed, and she was extremely obedient. In the next instant, her completely relaxed body suddenly started to move quickly. Meng Qi's slender body, dressed in a green robe, suddenly retreated to the edge of the formation. Xigong Xing did not dare to relax. The Mystic Thunder Seal completely enveloped her. She saw Meng Qi, who was protected by the lightning, start to move nimbly. Meng Qi first took out a handful of materials from her storage bag. Then, she moved quickly along the edge of the formation that had almost been completely destroyed by Xigong Changlai and the others. Her movements were so fast that Xigong Xing did not even have time to see what she was doing. Meng Qi's figure flashed, and she flashed to another location. She kept adding things to the formation. Sometimes, she would throw a spirit stone, sometimes she would put down some materials, and sometimes she would just modify a section of the formation's lines. Zayashiding. Meng Qi did not actually do much.
It was just that her figure was too fast.
However, no matter how fast she was, she looked as natural and unhurried as flowing water. The sleeves of her green robe fluttered. Under the illumination of the formation's fluorescent light, that elegant little face actually had a bit of a spirit that looked down on the world. It was not just Xigong Xing. Even Xigong Changlai and the others widened their eyes in surprise. Meng Qi was clearly still that little foundation establishment cultivator. However, her movements were so imposing. They were only stunned for a moment. Sikong Chong Lai suddenly reacted. Quickly break the formation. Don't worry about her. A light laugh came from Meng Qi's mouth. Formation? What is there to be afraid of? She raised her eyes and looked coldly at Sikong Chong Lai. She raised her hand. The 9th-rank spirit stone in her palm shone brightly and flew towards the formation under her feet. The formation lit up. Meng Qi stood in the center just like that. The mystic thunder seal around her slowly dissipated. She pointed to the sky with one hand. She was actually using herself as a medium. It was clearly daytime, but one could clearly see faint starlight sprinkling down like water, enveloping Meng Qi within. Sikong Chong Lai was completely dumbfounded. Even the 2 bodyguards that his father had sent to protect him looked at Meng Qi in surprise. What is this? What happened? The green gas in the formation had clearly disappeared. The densely packed bees had also turned into smoke and dissipated. However, not only did the formation's light not weaken, it was even brighter than before. However, they only felt a bone-deep chill rise from the soles of their feet. In an instant, they almost lost their will to continue fighting. This was a feeling that these 2 Yao cultivators had never felt before. The surroundings were clearly the same formation as before, but something was different. Sikong Chong Lai was also about to go crazy. Kill.
Kill.
The killing main formation of the 4 extreme formation. His voice was so sharp that it was piercing to the ear. His entire body trembled slightly due to fear. Sikong Chong Lai's teeth accidentally knocked together and made a GG sound. White Tiger True. True Monarch. No. Only when Lord Yao descends can he control the killing main formation. Chapter 55. Sikong Changlia's face was abnormally pale. The killing intent within the array soared to the heavens. He felt as though he was about to be frozen into ice. His hands that were hanging by his side were trembling slightly. He didn't dare to continue attacking the array with the spell that he had already formed. Tap tap. A few drops of sweat rolled down Sikong Chong Lai's chin and landed on a piece of blood jade on his clothes. You? His teeth chattered, and his voice was so hoarse that he couldn't speak. Young master. 2 Scarlet Fox men who were responsible for Sikong Chong Lai's safety stepped forward and said in a low voice, "Let's fight it out with her. He's just a foundation establishment cultivator." Shut up. Sikong Chong Lai's finger trembled slightly. He stared unblinkingly at the green-robed girl standing in front of him. The ancestor of the Crimson Fox clan had once lost his life in the 4 extreme formations. The Fox ancestor was a direct ancestor of Sikong Changlia's lineage. He had truly grown up listening to the legends of the 4 extreme arrays. In addition, in the past 10,000 years, the White Tiger clan had dominated the demon realm and produced several star monarchs. Sikong Chong Lai had received his father's advice since he was young. His fear of the 4 extreme formations was rooted in his blood. Young master. The captain and vice-captain of the guards also took a step closer to him and whispered to him, "What should we do?" Killing intent enveloped the entire area, and none of Sikong Chong Lai's subordinates were spared. They only felt a bone-piercing chill, and their fighting spirit instantly dissipated. Fear seeped out from the depths of his heart. It was impossible to suppress it. Kill. Kill. Lead the formation. Sikong Changlia's lips trembled slightly. Only that person. He stared at Meng Qi as he spoke. Outside the formation, the green-robed girl's long black hair was tied up with a wooden hairpin. She pointed a finger at the sky. The starlight coated her with a layer of soft light. Her elegant little face was as cold as ice. Her gaze was like a snowy mountain lake, incomparably cold as she looked at him. Sikong Chong Lai had never thought that there would be a day when he would actually be stared at by a Foundation establishment cultivator to the point that his back would go numb, to the point where he didn't even dare to move. He stared warily at Meng Qi's raised arm. As long as he waved it down, he would do it. Meng Qi's gaze suddenly swept behind Sikong Chong Lai and the others as he shouted softly,
Eh.
The Crimson Fox cultivators within the formation were all stunned. Before they could react, raging flames suddenly rose from the soles of their feet. The space that was filled with killing intent and bone-chilling cold suddenly became incomparably hot. Ordinary Scarlet Fox subordinates that Sikong Chong Lai brought along were basically all at the third stage. After being intimidated by the formation and burned by the flames, most of them didn't even have time to dodge. In an instant, their clothes and hair were all burned, and they screamed and rolled on the ground. Amidst the raging flames, Chu Tianfeng leaped down from a large tree on the left. A flame-like lotus flower floated in the air beside the black-clothed youth. Its petals fluttered, and blazing spiritual energy surged. He clasped the middle finger and thumb of his right hand, and the lotus floated into the air above the open space.
Step. Step.
Life. Lotus. Chu Tianfeng slowly enunciated each word coldly. Every time he chanted a word, the lotus flower would fly forward a certain distance. More than 10 red lotus flowers floated to the ground. By the time Chu Tianfeng finished chanting the last word, lotus, the ground was already covered in red lotus flowers. Open. Chu Tianfeng flicked his finger. With a boom, all the red lotus flowers on the ground bloomed. Flames even greater than before engulfed all the Crimson Fox clansmen. Even more tragic cries rang out. This time, even Sikong Chong Lai and the other fourth stage Yao cultivators were swept into the flames. They all raised their hands, wanting to use their techniques to extinguish the flames. A soft whistle came from the tree to the right of Meng Qi. 10,000 manifestations of the world. Qin Xiuma cultivated both sword arts and sword arts. In the end, he still focused on the sword. His long sword wasn't as imposing as Chu Tianfeng's. When he pointed his life-bound longsword, it suddenly transformed into thousands of sword shadows. The sword shadows were illusory and dreamlike. They stopped in the air and covered the entire ground. Qin Xiuma swiped his finger, and countless sword shadows descended. The sharp longsword was like the coldest and most ruthless assassin as it pierced towards every Crimson Fox cultivator surrounded by flames. The Crimson Fox cultivators who had been screaming in pain from the flames didn't even have time to dodge before they were stabbed by the sword shadows descending from the sky. The entire ground was in chaos. The fourth stage Yao cultivators besides Sikong Chong Lai could still barely stabilize their minds as they all gathered around him. They're just golden core cultivators. One of the two guards with the highest cultivation said in a low voice. He raised his hand and used a defensive technique to block the sword shadows descending from the sky and the flames beneath his feet. Young master,
Give the order.
the other fourth stage realm 8 guard also said. The two of them were sent by Sikong Chong Lai's father to protect him. Their mission was to escort him back to the Yao realm safely. The Four Extremes formation had thrown them into chaos. Now that they had calmed down, they quickly realized that the flames and sword shadows didn't do much damage to them. At the very least, they weren't fatal. As for the main killing formation of the legendary Four Extremes formation, if it really was a Yao, if it was that person who had personally acted, how could they have survived until now? That was a super killing formation that had caused even the incomparably powerful old fox ancestor's soul to scatter. Sikong Chong Lai took a deep breath as his eyes turned completely red. As he looked at Meng Qi, his gaze gradually turned fierce. Do it, Sikong Chong Lai. Su Junmo's voice came from the tree opposite Meng Qi. I've already warned you. Don't let me run into you outside of Crimson Fox territory. The day I run into you will be the day you die. Also, I've already said that I'll definitely let you die a horrible death.
Chong.
Difficult. Look. Even if they were all going to act, Su Junmo's words were still more than the others. Su Junmo. Sikong Chong Lai abruptly turned around. Before he could say anything, he heard the sound of wind, whoosh whoosh whoosh. The white-clothed Su Junmo instantly turned into 12 figures, surrounding the entire ground from all directions. No matter where Sikong Chong Lai looked, he could see Su Junmo standing tall on the treetops, his white robes fluttering in the wind. He could look down on a Jindan Xiuzha, but Su Junmo was a 4th-grade Yao cultivator like him. Not only that, his realm was even higher than his. Today, I want to see if you can still be so arrogant without your father's help. Sikong Chong Lai, if you're a man, then fight me one-on-one. Don't always call for reinforcements. Are you still a child?
Ah.
I forgot that this is the 3,000 worlds. Even if you want to call for reinforcements, you won't be able to. Your father must be very sad that he won't be able to protect his child today. The 12 Su Junmo spoke at the same time. Their voices seemed to come from 12 directions at the same time. Their voices rumbled. Even Chu Tianfeng and the others couldn't help but frown. Sikong Chong Lai was so angry that his face darkened. Su Junmo, you dare to humiliate my father? I'll definitely go back and complain to your father, I know. Other than the art of crying and complaining to your father, what else do you know? Right, Sikong Xing? Sikong Xing couldn't help but laugh. He even knows how to complain to his grandfather. Ha ha. Amidst Su Junmo's loud laughter, a dark green net suddenly rose from the ground. Countless dark green vines intertwined to form a giant net. As soon as it appeared, it revealed its ferocious claws and teeth and pounced towards the Crimson Fox Yao cultivators. Sikong Xing took a step forward and raised her delicate hand. Her master was from the Black Tortoise clan. Black tortoises weren't good at killing, but in the Yao realm where strength reigned supreme, they were a royal clan that was on par with the heavenly demon White Tiger. No Yao cultivator dared to underestimate their strength. Sikong Xing raised a single hand. A giant black wave rose. Amidst the sword lights and dark green vines, it attacked the Crimson Fox Yao cultivators like adding oil to fire. We've been tricked. One of Sikong Chong Lai's guards said sternly. What for extreme formation? The main killing formation? It's all a smokescreen. They purposely used it to make us cower. Otherwise, why would they need to use so many methods? Young master. As he spoke, he grabbed Sikong Chong Lai's arm and pulled him behind him. Don't think about that for extreme formation. That woman is just a foundational Xiuzha. How could she know such a killing formation? Counterattack. You dare to trick me. Sikong Chong Lai finally reacted. Amidst the wails of his subordinates, he looked savagely at Meng Qi. When you fall into my hands, I will definitely make you wish you were dead. I will let you know the consequences of deceiving me. He abruptly tore off the blood jade around his neck and began to mutter an incantation. Careful! Sikong Xing, who was the closest, took a step and blocked in front of Meng Qi. Her gaze became grave. Sikong Chong Lai is going to fight with his life on the line. Meng Qi's expression was still cold. Her arm that was still pointing towards the sky had not been lowered. The starlight on her body became denser and denser. It's fine, she said faintly. It's just a small trick. Haha, Sikong Chong Lai laughed savagely. His hand that was holding the blood jade turned red. Behind him, the shadow of an enormous red fox slowly appeared. The shadow became clearer and clearer. Gradually, one could see the long fur on the enormous red fox's body that was blown by the wind. Behind the red fox, 8 tails vigorously extended in all directions. Ancestor Red Fox. Ancestor Red Fox. It's the Ancestor Red Fox's blood jade. Even Sikong Xing and Su Junmo's expressions became grave. Although Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xioma did not know what the ancestor red fox was, they also felt the pressure that suddenly increased. Small tricks. Come and break it. Sikong Chonglai laughed savagely and suddenly charged towards the edge of the formation. I want to see how powerful your for extreme formation is. Can it block my ancestor red fox's attack? Of course. Meng Qi pointed her fingers like a knife and finally lowered her raised arm. The starlight around her had already condensed into a solid form. She raised the corner of her lips, and her smile was as sharp as a knife. A bunch of idiots. No one could say for sure what had happened. The formation on Meng Qi's ground suddenly exploded with a brilliant light. The light soared into the sky, and her green robe fluttered in the wind. Her long hair fluttered as she stood in the light. It was as if she was the ruler of the world, looking down on her subjects. 7 luminaries. It's the 7 luminaries formation. Sikong Chonglai screamed as he covered his eyes and retreated. 7 luminaries. Ancestor Red Fox. Ancestor Red Fox, save me. Ha! Meng Qi chuckled lightly. She looked up at the red fox's shadow in the air. Break. She pointed her finger, and the starlight shot towards the red fox's shadow. The red fox's shadow, which looked very imposing and oppressive just a moment ago, was instantly corroded by the starlight. It turned into specks of light and disappeared. I saw the blood jade on your neck, Meng Qi said faintly amid Sikong Chonglai's screams. On the empty ground, the flames were still burning, and the red lotus floated in the air. Wherever Qin Xiuma pointed, sword shadows would rain down, and miserable screams could be heard. The dark green vines weaved into a net, stopping every red fox demon cultivator who wanted to escape. Under the command of Sikong Xing's slender hands, huge black waves rose and fell, each wave higher than the last. Finally, there was the starlight. It was even more resplendent than the summer sun. Wherever it went, even the 2 strongest 4th stage 8th realm bodyguards did not dare to open their eyes. The starlight devoured the strength and aura of all the red fox demon cultivators. They gradually lost their auras and slowly collapsed. The empty ground seemed to have turned into an azura's field. One red fox demon cultivator after another fell. When everything settled down, not a single red fox demon cultivator was left standing. Sikong Xing slowly let out a long breath. The clothes on her back were already drenched. She had experienced battles that were more dangerous and intense than this, but she had never experienced a battle like today, where she won despite being outnumbered. In a situation where the opponent's strength was several times their own people were actually unharmed. Sikong Xing slowly lowered her hand and subconsciously turned to look at Meng Qi. The green-robed girl's small face was pale, and her forehead was covered in sweat. However, she still gritted her teeth, and her whole body relaxed, standing motionlessly in the center of the formation. Her green-robed body trembled slightly, as if she would collapse at any moment. Meng Qi. The 12 Su Junmo merged into one and swept down from the treetops. Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiuma looked at each other and also jumped down from the treetops, quickly walking towards Meng Qi. The 4 of them quickly walked to Meng Qi's side and surrounded her in the center. Are you all right? Sikong Xing asked. As soon as Meng Qi opened her mouth, even she was shocked. Her voice was hoarse, as if it had been rubbed by rough sandpaper. Her whole body was weak, and her completely overdrawn spiritual sea was in extreme pain. Her whole body was so weak, as if a gust of wind could blow her away. I'm not. Before she could finish her sentence, her whole body fell backward. Be careful. Chu Tianfeng was standing behind her, and he reached out to catch Meng Qi. Meng Qi was in a trance. She felt as if her body didn't belong to her, and the sharp pain tore at her head. In her dry and overdrawn spiritual sea, It was as if there were countless small knives cutting her spiritual sea. She was in so much pain that she wanted to roll around, but she couldn't find where the pain came from. "Be careful," she heard someone say behind her, and 2 hands were placed on her shoulders, as if to support her. Meng Qi subconsciously thanked them in a low voice. "Thank you." Surrounded by companions that she could trust for the time being, she closed her eyes and let herself faint. Then Chu Tianfeng was dumbfounded. He looked down at his empty hands. Just now, when Meng Qi fell backward, he was the closest to her. He immediately reached out to catch her, and his hand had already touched the green robe on her body. Meng Qi even said thank you to him. In the next moment, the other party waved her right hand and slapped him in the chest, forcing him to take a few steps back. She didn't use much strength in that slap, and it wasn't to hurt him. She just used her strength skillfully. Chu Tianfeng didn't even have time to react. After being pushed away, he still maintained the same posture of catching her. He looked up in a daze. Meng Qi had fallen into Sikong Xing's arms. Meng Qi. Sikong Xing didn't think so much. She quickly caught Meng Qi and carefully let her lean on her body. Meng Qi wasn't short among the female cultivators, but her figure was thin, and she looked like a 17 or 18-year-old girl. Sikong Xing was slightly taller than her. She reached out and held Meng Qi's waist, letting her head rest on her shoulder. She fainted. Sikong Xing reached out and put the tip of Meng Qi's nose to test it. Her breathing is still stable. Chu Tianfeng. Even if she fainted, she didn't want to fall into his arms. Was she instinctively rejecting him? He felt a little uncomfortable in his heart, and he slowly walked back in silence. She must have overdrawn her spiritual aura, so she fainted. Su Junmo said in a low voice, "Let's go back to Huajiang Mansion first." He looked at Meng Qi, who had fainted in Sikong Xing's arms with a complicated expression. "Sikong Xing, I can only trouble you." "No problem." Sikong Xing breathed a sigh of relief when she heard that it was just overdrawn spiritual aura. After all, she was a 4th-stage Yao cultivator. Although she looked like a slender and stunning beauty, her strength was naturally not weak. Sikong Xing reached out and put her right hand around Meng Qi's shoulder. Her left hand reached out from under her knees and carried her horizontally. Meng Qi was so powerful just now. She lowered her head and looked at Meng Qi's little face. Meng Qi's face was pale, and her long eyelashes drooped down, casting a small shadow on her fair cheeks. She clearly looked weak and frail, so why was she so powerful? Sikong Xing's eyes lit up, and her eyes were full of longing. She's really too powerful. I've decided I'll always stay by Meng Qi's side. I like this kind of girl the most. Su Junmo, Chu Tianfeng, Qin Shuma. Even in the beast house in Meng Qi's storage bag, little Qi, who was listlessly lying on the bamboo bed, seemed to have overdrawn all of his strength. Suddenly, he raised his eyes. His azure blue eyes dimmed to the extreme. Blood was still slowly seeping out of his front paw, which required Meng Qi to change the dressing and bandage it every day. Bright red bloodstains had seeped through the soft white cloth that wrapped the wound. The originally clean and soft white fur on his body had lost its luster. Little Qi's semicircular ears shook slightly. The dark power that had been devouring his spiritual aura, which he had suppressed with great difficulty, seemed to have sensed his absent-mindedness. In an instant, it became even more ferocious. His body trembled slightly, and he had no choice but to lie down again. Sikong Xing said something else, but little Qi didn't react at all, as if he didn't hear anything at all. At the same time, outside Huajiang Manor, in a forest some distance away from Meng Qi, Lu Qing ran cautiously followed behind the black-clothed male Xiao. From time to time, she raised her head to look at the tall figure in front of her. They had already been searching here for a long time. She didn't know when they would be able to kill a Yao cultivator and pay off their debt. Thinking of the scene of being forced to pay off their debt that day, Lu Qingran's eyes became somewhat hot again. She had been spoiled since she was a child. She had truly never suffered such grievances. It seemed the way those cultivators of the Cultivator Alliance looked at her was as if she was a scoundrel who owed money but didn't pay it back.
Woo-woo.
So the highest level is only a 4th grade Yao cultivator. The black-clothed male Xiao was still wearing his bamboo hat. He stopped under a tree, his finger brushing the marks on the tree. This is enough to make those cultivators feel as if they are facing a great enemy. TSK, Lu Qingran looked at him. She gently bit her lower lip, wanting to speak, but thinking of the man's temper, she didn't say anything in the end. What do you want to say? The male Xiao glanced back at her, his voice cold. Say it. Earlier, we clearly encountered 2 3rd-grade Yao cultivators. Why didn't you capture them and exchange them for spirit stones first? Lu Qingran mustered up her courage and asked. A group of 3rd-grade and 4th-grade Yao cultivators. Do you want me to hunt them down one by one? The black-clothed male Xiao looked ahead indifferently, a trace of disdain flashing through his eyes. He glanced back at Lu Qingran. Seeing the other party's aggrieved appearance as she lightly bit her lower lip, he still said, I will gather them together and take care of them all at once. Once this matter is resolved, the male Xiao's voice suddenly became deep and cold. That Meng Qi must pay the price for actually making me suffer such a great humiliation. Meng Qi felt like she had a very long dream. In her dream, she returned to her teacher's side, returned to her most carefree years. He was her teacher, her friend, and her confidant. The feeling of getting along like that was really too good. It made her feel that even though her life wasn't short, it had passed so quickly. It was as if the day of separation had arrived in the blink of an eye. The white-robed man turned and walked away, his voice coming from afar. In 3 months, I will come here to pick you up. Don't let me wait too long. Also, don't call me master anymore. Meng Qi suddenly opened her eyes. You're awake? As soon as she moved, Xikong Xing, who had been guarding by the bed, jumped up happily.
How do you feel?
Do you feel any discomfort? Before Meng Qi could speak, a soft hand was placed on her forehead. Well, it seems that there's no problem. Xikong Xing jumped up. You've slept for 14 hours. You must be thirsty. Let me get you a glass of water. I've slept for so long. 14 hours, 14 hours.
Wait.
Meng Qi sat up. What time is it now? It's already the next morning. Xikong Xing came over with a teacup. She carefully supported Meng Qi's shoulder and brought the teacup to her lips. Drink some water first. Thank goodness. Meng Qi heaved a sigh of relief. She didn't miss the auction at Heavens Beyond. She drank some water and got off the bed. Xikong Hanlai and the others, don't worry. Xikong Xing said with a smile. They've all been sent to the Cultivator Alliance. Even they and their divine devouring vines have been exchanged for spirit stones. Here. She took out a brocade pouch from her storage bag and handed it to Meng Qi. Because we're going to get rid of all the hidden threats in one go, the Cultivator Alliance doubled the mission reward. They gave us a total of 4 9th-grade spirit stones.
Okay.
Meng Qi nodded. Where are they? They went to rest. Xikong Xing said. Everyone was tired when they came back yesterday, so they rented 2 small courtyards in Rosy Lane and stayed here. Okay. Meng Qi nodded again. 4 9th-grade spirit stones. How should they split them? Meng Qi. Xikong Xing leaned in front of her. Are you thinking about how to split these spirit stones? Meng Qi nodded. The 4 of us have discussed it. If it weren't for your array yesterday, the 4 of us might have died there. So we all agree that we should give all these spirit stones to you.
No.
Meng Qi shook her head firmly. We agreed to split them according to how much effort each of us put in. As she spoke, she opened the door and walked out. I'll call them. As soon as the door opened, Chu Tianfeng and the other two were already waiting in the courtyard. They were either standing or sitting. When they heard the commotion, they all looked at Meng Qi. "You're awake?" Su Junmo's expression relaxed. If the person that his lord asked him to protect was injured, he wouldn't be able to forgive himself even if he died 100 times. "Do you feel any discomfort?" YQXSW. Or Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xioma didn't say anything. The two of them looked at Meng Qi in silence, their hearts filled with mixed feelings. After yesterday's battle, the girl's growth speed and her own strength made them feel great pressure. They said they wanted to protect her. In the end, it was her who took control of the situation and dealt with those Yao cultivators. This feeling was simply terrible. "I'm fine. Thank you for your concern." Meng Qi nodded at Su Junmo. She walked towards the three of them. "Let's split the spirit stones." Meng Qi paused. "I still have things to do. Let's get this over with." As she spoke, she took out 4 ninth-stage spirit stones from her brocade pouch. The array controlled the situation and deterred Sikong Changlai. "I should take one," Meng Qi said as she put away a spirit stone. Sikong Xing contributed information and put in a lot of effort. "He should also take one." As she spoke, she handed the other spirit stone to Sikong Xing, who followed her. "The remaining 2 spirit stones will be divided equally among the 5 of us." Meng Qi asked straightforwardly, "Is there a problem?" Qin Xioma and Chu Tianfeng didn't want these spirit stones at all. However, if they didn't take them, their previous image of earning spirit stones would completely collapse. In the future, they would have to rack their brains to find other excuses to follow Meng Qi. The two of them had mixed feelings. They looked into Meng Qi's eyes and nodded slowly. "No problem. That's good." Meng Qi quickly divided the spirit stones. "I still have things to do."
Goodbye.
She turned around and went back to her room. Even Sikong Xing was outside the door. This was in Rosy Lane, so it was still safe. Meng Qi quickly took out the jade scroll of Sky Beyond and held it in her hand. She closed her eyes. In a flash, she appeared outside Sky Beyond City. Today was the day of Sky Beyond's monthly sky auction. When Meng Qi hurried to the teleportation array at the city gate, there were obviously more people on the road than before. Fellow Daoist Chen, you've also received a message from that person? 2 male cultivators walked past Meng Qi quickly. Both of them were wearing dark blue robes, with wide sleeves that fluttered in the wind. They looked like immortals. "I heard that anyone who is qualified to enter the sky auction this time, whether it's a sect leader, an elder, or a hidden itinerant cultivator, as long as they enter Sky Beyond, they will receive a message. Naturally, I'm no exception." The cultivator surnamed Chen smiled and shook his head. "This is the first time. I heard about it too." The cultivator beside him nodded with a smile. Therefore, some sect leaders who didn't plan to participate in the sky auction, as well as a few who have been hidden from the world for a long time, actually showed up today. "I'm afraid they're already in the sky auction now." "Then we'll have to hurry." The cultivator surnamed Chen flicked his long sleeves and walked faster. Meng Qi was baffled when she heard that. What message? Her nameplate didn't seem to have any movement at all. She looked down at her Sky Beyond nameplate. Xue Jinwen had told her that if she received a message, there would be a notification. They had also exchanged nameplate imprints with each other and could send messages to each other. Meng Qi stared at her nameplate for a while and suddenly became nervous. According to what the two people said just now, wouldn't the number of people who came to participate in the auction this time increase by a lot? Did that mean that there would be a lot more people competing for the Jiu? Meng Qi's heart sank. Chapter 56. From Meng Qi to the city gate, 4 or 5 groups of people passed her on the short road. They had obviously come together and were discussing something as they walked. The more Mengqi looked, the more worried she became. Of course, she did not think that these people were all here for the Jiu. The Jiu was indeed rare and could not attract so many people. Most of the people who passed by her in a hurry looked to be middle-aged cultivators in their 40s. Regardless of gender, they were all tall and straight and had outstanding temperaments. At a glance, one could tell that they were not ordinary cultivators. Even if these people were here for other things, Mengqi would have no hope of getting the Jiu if they called out a price when they saw it. She became more and more anxious. It was not easy to meet the Jiu in the Trichiliocosm. Was she going to miss it just like that? Mengqi quickened her pace and walked towards the city gate. She had not been to the Heaven-class auction house before. After asking the manager at the city gate, she hurriedly stepped into the teleportation array. She left in a hurry and did not notice that the manager of Sky Beyond Heaven behind her was looking at her with a flash of surprise on his face. The floating island where the Heaven-class auction house was located was the third highest of the 7 floating islands in Sky Beyond Heaven. Not far to its left was the Sky Beyond Heaven Tower. Standing here, one could see the main building of the Sky Beyond Heaven Tower. Other than that, it was not much different from the Heaven-class auction house. Mengqi walked out of the teleportation array, identified the direction, and walked forward. Xue Jinwen had mentioned to her that the floating island used as an auction house was usually in the middle of the floating island. There would be some courtyards around where appraisers like her and Lin Mo, who worked for the auction house, would live. The scenery on the floating island was still very beautiful. The clouds in the distance were rolling, and the sky was a curtain. The island was filled with birds and fragrant flowers. It was elegant and grand. She subconsciously looked up at the highest floating island in the sky. Mengqi's fingers that were hanging by her side trembled slightly. The voice from yesterday in the suburbs seemed to appear in her mind again. Don't be afraid. Relax. And the last formation, the aura and pride that looked down on the world. Was it him? Mengqi's eyelids narrowed slightly. She did not mention this to anyone. At first, she thought it was an illusion. But the opponent was too strong. He had actually used the messy array she had set up to complete the modification of the array so calmly and casually. 7 planets formation. Mengqi thought of the name of the formation that scared Sikong Changlai out of his wits. She wouldn't. This was one of the arrays that she had heard of, but her master had never taught her. It was said that this was a famous killing formation and was filled with even more killing intent than the main killing formation of the 4 Extremes formation. Mengqi's long eyelashes trembled slightly. After she fainted and woke up, she tried to call out to that person again, but she never got a response. So, had the other party really appeared? However, she looked up at the floating island in the distance. However, she was still far from being qualified to be his disciple. Mengqi pursed his lips, and his gaze became firm. It didn't matter. She could work harder. She clenched her fists by her side. 4 Extremes formation, 7 planets formation, Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xioma weren't too surprised when they heard this, but it was enough to scare Sikong Changlai and the other Yao cultivators out of their wits. Did Master really come from the Yao realm? Did he really have something to do with true monarch White Tiger? Mengqi pondered. She knew even less about the Yao realm. Most of the things she knew about the Yao realm were from the talkative fox when she treated Su Junmo's injuries in her previous life. Su Junmo liked to gossip, and he always knew what was important. Mengqi had heard a lot about the affairs of the Great Sky Yao from him, but she didn't hear much about the Yao realm. Let's not think about it for now. Mengqi shook her head and expelled these thoughts that she couldn't sort out from her mind. If Master really had something to do with true monarch White Tiger, then she had to save little Qi even more. Let's get you first. Mengqi quickened her steps when she thought of this. She had been completely immersed in her thoughts and didn't notice that the cultivators who came to the sky floating island couldn't help but glance at her every time they passed by her. Not everyone could enter the sky auction house. Most of the people who could stand on this floating island were from the Four Realms' great sections. They were either elders or the most outstanding disciples in the sect. Some were even the sect masters. Otherwise, they were rogue cultivators who didn't belong to any sect in the 3,000 worlds. However, these rogue cultivators often had something special about them. Any one of their names in the Four Realms of the 3,000 worlds was a powerful figure that cultivators were familiar with. These cultivators often looked much younger than their actual age. Even so, Meng-Chi was still too young compared to them. She was so young that these cultivators, who had cultivated for many years and were no longer tempted by external objects, would still look at her in surprise when they passed by her. It was true that one could change their appearance at will in the sky beyond heaven, but those who could enter the sky auction house didn't need to change their appearance. They didn't mind being recognized at all. The girl in front of them looked at most 17 or 18 years old. When the cultivators who were traveling in groups saw Meng-Chi, they would often look at their companions and then leave in a hurry. Fanshu and Kanshu. Meng-Chi didn't feel it at first, but after more and more gazes fell on her, she also realized that something was wrong. She looked up at her surroundings and also found that she seemed to be a little special. Meng-Chi's gaze suddenly fell on the face of a man in a black robe. The other party was also very young and slender. The same black belt tied his robe, making him look even more tall and straight. The black-robed man's hair was tied on top of his head by a small silver crown. He had wide shoulders and a narrow waist. His facial features seemed to be carved by a knife. He looked like an unsheathed longsword, cold, ruthless, but incomparably sharp. It was him. Meng-Chi's eyes flashed slightly, and she subconsciously looked at the other party's arm. As if feeling Meng-Chi's gaze, the black-robed man also turned his head to look at her. His gaze was very cold, just like his entire person. His gaze was like lightning, quickly sweeping across Meng-Chi's face, and then looking away. From beginning to end, he didn't show the slightest emotion. Meng-Chi tilted her head slightly and looked away. Young friend Meng's. Suddenly, a strange and familiar voice came from behind Meng-Chi. She turned her head and saw Elder Sun Yan of Burning Sky Palace standing there with a middle-aged man in a black robe. "It's really you?" Sun Yan saw her and was extremely surprised. "I saw young friend Meng from afar just now and thought I was mistaken. I didn't expect it to really be you." As he spoke, he sized up Meng-Chi several times. Although Sun Yan had a smile on his face, the surprise and doubt in his eyes couldn't be concealed. "Elder Sun," Meng-Chi bowed to him. "Young friend Meng." Sun Yan politely returned the bow. He had always been very polite to Meng-Chi and Yan Mingfeng, speaking up for them many times. Meng-Chi had a very good impression of him. "This is our sect master," Sun Yan introduced. "Palace Master Chu." Meng-Chi bowed to the black-robed Palace Master Chu Ji of Burning Sky Palace. Chu Ji's expression was indifferent as he returned the bow. "I didn't expect to meet you again after parting at Cool Breeze Valley." Sun Yan's expression had returned to normal. He was the elder of Burning Sky Palace who was best at handling external affairs. He smiled at Meng-Chi and said, "Young friend, you are young and talented. After 3 days, I have to look at you in a different light." Meng-Chi was a little confused. She had a good impression of Sun Yan. He was easygoing and friendly. He didn't put on airs in front of juniors like them and was always polite. But today, he was clearly a little too polite. But Meng-Chi didn't know why. She could only smile at Sun Yan again. "Young friend, are you also here to participate in today's auction?" Sun Yan made an inviting gesture. As the three of them slowly walked forward, he asked, "Young friend, have you seen Heavenly Wind?"
Yes.
Meng-Chi nodded. Just now, they had divided the money they earned from the Cultivator Alliance.
Haha.
Sun Yan smiled, quite happily. "Young friend, when you said you were coming to Burning City, Heavenly Wind went into seclusion as soon as he entered the sect. When he came out, he went down the mountain and didn't return. I guessed that he must be with you. Hearing Chu Tianfeng's name, Chu Ji's expression finally changed a little. His gaze swept over Meng Qi's face and finally looked at Sun Yan. Sun Yan was able to become an elder of Burning Sky Palace. His cultivation talent wasn't extremely outstanding, but he had his own strengths. Chu Ji was obviously very confident in him. When he heard that his son was with this young female cultivator, he didn't care too much. I have indeed been working with young Palace Master Chu to hunt demons these days, Meng Qi explained lightly.
Yes.
Sun Yan nodded with a smile. But compared to you, Heavenly Wind still needs to work harder. He looked at Meng Qi. Young friend, did you come alone?
Yes.
Meng Qi nodded. To be able to enter the heavens beyond heaven's auction house at your age, I guess you are the only one in heavens beyond heaven, Sun Yan said with a smile. Meng Qi's heart skipped a beat. Young friend, please. As they spoke, they had already arrived outside the heavens auction house. From beginning to end, Sun Yan didn't ask why Meng Qi was here. He had always been like this, kind and gentle, but would not make people feel offended. Except for calling Meng Qi young friend Meng at the beginning, he didn't mention her surname, nor did he call her full name. He kept a good distance and was thoughtful. Compared to the somewhat cold Chu Ji, Sun Yan was indeed the most suitable person to deal with Burning Sky Palace's external affairs. Palace Master Chu. Elder Sun, please. Meng Qi was a junior. She stepped aside and politely let the two go first. Then we will go first, Sun Yan said with a smile. If you come to Burning City again, please be sure to come to the palace as a guest. I will definitely welcome you.
Please.
As he spoke, he smiled and cupped his hands and entered the Heavens Auction House with Chu Ji. Meng Qi watched them go in. She didn't expect to meet an acquaintance in Sky Beyond. But on second thought, the cultivators she met outside Sky Beyond said that the major sects of the Four Realms would come. As one of the top 10 sects in the East Land, Burning Sky Palace would certainly come. Whatever. Meng Qi took a deep breath and walked into the courtyard in front of her. It was similar to the Xian auction house. It looked like a quaint courtyard, but after stepping in, it was as if she had entered another world. Meng Qi was now in a separate room. There was still a tea table in the room, and there were 3 or 4 futons next to it. Different from last time, there were 3 large food boxes on the tea table this time. The food box on the left was divided into 12 small compartments, and there were 12 different kinds of candies inside. There were rose pine nut candies, osmanthus candies, and so on, which were the favorite snacks of young female cultivators. In the middle box, there were all kinds of exquisite pastries. On the right, there was a large box of fresh fruits. Meng Qi had never seen some of them before, and they looked fresh and cute. Next to the 3 food boxes, there was a teapot and teacups. It didn't look like they were here to participate in the auction, but more like they were going on an outing with friends and having a picnic in the suburbs. Was this the benefit of the Sky Auction House? Meng Qi raised her eyebrows, picked a futon, and sat down cross-legged. She took a pine nut candy and put it in her mouth, and her gaze drifted outside. Similar to the Xian auction house, these rooms also surrounded a valley. The people in each room couldn't see the situation in other rooms. She wasn't in a hurry and waited patiently. After a while, a cloud platform rose slowly from the valley. On the cloud platform, a middle-aged cultivator stood with a smile and bowed to the surroundings. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to participate in this Sky auction house. I greet you on behalf of the owner of this place. Meng Qi continued to eat the candy. Crunch, crunch. The Sky Auction House has always auctioned only 12 items, the man said with a smile. You must have received the message from the owner of this place. This time, we will make an exception and add a 13th item. Meng Qi blinked and took out her nameplate to have a look. Why didn't she receive it? What was the 13th item? You must already know the qualifications for the 13th item. I will make a long story short. The auction will now begin. The man said again. Meng Qi suddenly understood. It seemed that although she could enter the sky auction house, she didn't have the qualifications to bid for that item, so she didn't receive the message. That was true. Even if she didn't belong to any sect, her master wouldn't want her as a Zhuji cultivator. If the people who received the message were all people like the palace master of Burning Sky Palace, she really couldn't compete with these people. When the auction began, Meng Qi perked up and listened attentively to the middle-aged cultivator introducing the first item. The first item is the Mountain River 8 trigrams gown. This item was made hundreds of years ago by the Cloud sect, which is the best at forging in the 3,000 worlds. There is a complete Mountain River 8 trigrams diagram on it. Unfortunately, it fell into the demon world 100 years ago and was recovered by us 3 years ago. Three Dongshu realm elders of the Cloud sect repaired the Mountain River 8 trigrams diagram and removed the demonic energy on it. This is one of the most famous defensive treasures in the world. The starting price is 500 Xian spirit stones.
Pfft.
Meng Qi had just poured herself a cup of tea and spat it out after taking a sip. 500 Xian spirit stones. Meng Qi was a little confused. She knew the rules of the auction. Usually the cheapest item would be placed first. That was 500 Xian spirit stones. Above the 9th grade spirit stones were Xian spirit stones. But the exchange between Xian spirit stones and 9th grade spirit stones was not as simple as 1 Xian spirit stone for 1,000 9th grade spirit stones. Xian spirit stones were very valuable in themselves. 500 Xian spirit stones. An ordinary sect in the 4 realms could barely take out that many spirit stones. So, Meng Qi looked at the pitiful few hundred 9th grade spirit stones in her storage bag. She couldn't even take out 1/10 of the starting price of the first item. Was there no hope for Jiu? Meng Qi looked forward. The price of the Mountain River 8 trigrams gown had risen and was finally sold for 2,000 Xian spirit stones. This was because the people who came to participate in the auction today did not pay much attention to it. After a few casual bids, the deal was quickly closed. Meng Qi sat there in a daze. She was no longer in the mood to eat the sweets. Soon, the second and third items were sold for several thousand to tens of thousands of Xian spirit stones. Everyone was clearly a little absent-minded. They all casually called out 2 bids and closed the deal. The fourth item is a 5th grade treasure, the middle-aged male cultivator said with a smile. Jiu. Everyone knows that this is the feather of the heavenly demon phoenix. The phoenix clan rebirth once every 99 years and gives birth to a feather. As the royal family of the heavenly demons, not only are there few heavenly demon phoenixes, their feather is even more precious and rarely falls into the 3 realms. Meng Qi, she knew. She looked around in despair. There must be many medical sects here today. They would definitely compete with her, no. Meng Qi felt that she was probably thinking too much. She should first worry about whether she could afford the starting price. The starting price. The middle-aged male cultivator deliberately paused here. Although she knew that there was no hope, Meng Qi's heart still jumped to her throat. 200 9th grade spirit stones, the middle-aged male cultivator said with a smile. 200. Meng Qi's eyes widened. 9th grade spirit stones. Are you serious? Just now, they were all using Xian spirit stones as a unit. Why were they using 9th grade spirit stones for Jiu? She took a deep breath and looked around. Although she knew that she could not see other cultivators, hope rekindled in her heart. After the middle-aged male cultivator finished speaking, no one bid for a while. With a starting price of 200 9th grade spirit stones, each bid must not be lower than 29. Meng Qi gritted her teeth and was the first to raise the price. 229. She carefully probed. No matter what, she had to give it a try. Meng Qi quickly counted the number of spirit stones she had. She only had 400 9th grade spirit stones now. If no one raised the price directly, she could still bid for a few more rounds.
Maybe not.
After all, not everyone needed Jiyu. A fellow Taoist bid 229th grade spirit stones. The middle-aged male cultivator looked around with a smile. Is there a higher bid? Meng Qi's heart jumped to her throat and beat fast. She was uneasy, as if waiting for the verdict. The entire heaven-class auction house suddenly became extremely quiet. The first 3 fifth-grade items were still casually bid for, but now everyone seemed to have made up their minds and did not want to waste time bidding for something that was only 209th-grade spirit stones. After Meng Qi's bid, no one else made a bid. When the time came, the middle-aged male cultivator announced with a smile, "Then congratulations to this fellow Taoist for bidding 229th-grade spirit stones for Jiyu. Please leave your divine sense mark." Meng Qi. She sat in the room blankly, and her heart still hadn't completely settled down. Meng Qi couldn't even believe her ears. "So, I managed to bid for Jiyu?" Chapter 57. Meng Qi sat in a daze for a long time until a window suddenly opened on the wall behind her room. A wooden handle creaked as it pushed out a small black wooden plate. The wooden sign fell on the coffee table, and Meng Qi picked it up and looked at it. On the back of the wooden sign, there was a golden heaven character. Other than that, there was nothing else. Meng Qi left her divine sense mark on the wooden sign, and then held the wooden sign and played with it for a while. She was still a little absent-minded. She actually got the blazing feather. The price was lower than she expected, only more than 209th stage spirit stones. Meng Qi's initial preparation was to spend all the spirit stones she had on her to exchange for this blazing feather. She even thought that if she really couldn't compete with those sects, she would take this sign and wait outside the heaven auction house. She specially refined a bottle of medicinal pills, which could be exchanged for the blazing feather with spirit stones. Although this thing was one of the heaven and earth treasures, it was not so precious that people would be reluctant to part with it. She believed that some sects with deep heritage would definitely have other blazing feather in their sect. Unexpectedly, Meng Qi grabbed the black wooden sign again and looked at it for a while and smiled contentedly. Even the golden heaven character at the back, the more she looked at it, the more she felt that it was written. The strokes were bold and vigorous, and it was obvious that it was written by a famous master. She admired it for a while before carefully putting the wooden sign on the coffee table. The room was filled with the sweet aroma of fresh fruits and pastries. Meng Qi was relieved and began to eat again. In such a short time, the auction had reached the 7th item. Meng Qi had nothing to worry about, and even listening to the middle-aged male cultivator introduce the auction items, she felt interested. Today's 7th auction item is a scroll that can't be identified. The middle-aged male cultivator said, "The jade slip that recorded the spell was found in the body of a fierce beast hunted by a cultivator in the Fallen Star Sea half a year ago. After this person was brought back to the sect, the elders of the sect repeatedly studied it for a long time, but they still couldn't crack the seal on it. So 3 months ago, it was sent to Sky Beyond." Meng Qi's heart skipped a beat when he heard that it was a technique from the Starfall Sea. The Starfall Sea was connected to the 3,000 worlds, the demon world and the devil world. It was extremely dangerous inside. It was said that anyone below the spirit-severing stage would die upon entering. If one wanted to hunt ferocious beasts inside, one had to be at least a cultivator at the great perfection of the spirit-severing stage. Xiozha that could kill vicious beasts and come out alive definitely came from large sections. Even their elders couldn't figure out what the incantation on the jade slip was. It seemed that the person who lost the jade slip was a very powerful senior Xiozha. If Meng Qi could think of this, those who could attend the heaven class auction would naturally be able to think of it as well. When the middle-aged Xiozha finished speaking, rare sounds of discussion came from the valley. The middle-aged Xiozha smiled as he looked around. He had been in charge of the Heaven Series auction for a long time. Today was the first time such a situation had occurred. Almost all the items that could appear here were treasures. Usually, if one of them was placed in a small or medium-sized sect in the Trichiliocosm, it could be used as a sect-guarding treasure. Today, the 7th item was auctioned. Finally, there was a bit of the atmosphere of the Heaven class auction. He left a few minutes for everyone to discuss first. Then he continued unhurriedly, "The sect that sent this jade slip has a request. The sect or Xiozha that bought the jade slip must make a great soul oath that if they can decipher the incantation on the jade slip in the future, they must share it with them." A sneer came from the valley. They really have a good plan. If they can't decipher it themselves, they will exchange it for Ling stones and return it intact in the future. A sect that can enter the Starfall Sea has such magnanimity. No wonder the elders couldn't decipher the incantation jade slip even when they gathered. Haha, laughable, laughable. Sounds of mockery came from all around the valley. While it wasn't to the extent of abuse, the harmonious atmosphere from before was swept away. Meng Qi listened carefully. These mocking voices mostly came from the rooms in the lower part of the valley. Why argue? At this time, a middle-aged male cultivator high up in the valley slowly said, "Everyone is a sect of their own. What difference does it make if there's one more incantation or one less incantation? In the end, it's hard to accomplish anything." Another voice said, "Why argue with each other like this? What's the starting price?" Another Xiozha said, "Fellow Daoist Linghu, don't keep us in suspense." Linghu Xie, who was called Fellow Daoist Linghu, was the middle-aged male cultivator presiding over this auction. He laughed heartily and said, "Originally, the owner of this jade slip set the starting price at 3,000 Xian spirit stones." Meng Qi was already numb. Apart from her blaze feather, the several items that had been sold in the Heaven class auction were all sold in Xian spirit stones. However, he just told me that the requirements for the jade slips auction remain unchanged. The starting price has now been lowered to 500 8th grade spirit stones. Linghu Xie smiled as he looked around. In addition, if a fellow Daoist can decipher the jade slip in the future, he will use one of his own incantations in exchange. Whispers suddenly sounded in the valley again. Meng Qi poured a cup of tea for herself. Such a roller coaster plot was worthy of being called the Heaven class auction house. She ate another small piece of pastry and watched with great interest. From 2,000 Xian spirit stones to 200 8th grade spirit stones, even she could compete for it. The valley was filled with endless discussion. Unless they deliberately spoke loudly, Meng Qi could not hear what they were saying. She threw another candy into her mouth. The fragrance of tea filled her mouth, and there was a tinge of sour plum in the middle of the candy. SLK. Calm the sour taste diluted the sweetness of the candy, making it refreshing and delicious. Meng Qi could not help but take another look at the candy. Was this a dessert from Heaven's Beyond Tower? It was quite delicious. She liked it. She reached out and threw another candy into her mouth. She did not expect the Heaven class auction house to treat her so well. Even the sweets and desserts were so delicious. If she had the chance next time, she could go to Heaven's Beyond Tower to try their dishes. She did not eat anything that day and left in a hurry. After buying what she wanted, Meng Qi recalled the dishes that she did not have time to taste that day. She felt a little regretful. She chewed on the sweet and sour candy with the fragrance of tea and green plum. There was still no bid for the 7th auction item. Meng Qi. She thought about it. 200 8th grade spirit stones, she could also participate. 300 8th grade spirit stones. Meng Qi bid. Originally, 200 8th grade spirit stones only needed to be increased by 20. However, she could be considered a rich woman now. She also bought what she needed, so she could be more generous. Meng Qi noticed that after she bid for the first time, the entire valley suddenly quieted down. The discussion just now disappeared. Only Ling Huxie's voice echoed. A fellow Taoist bid 300 8th-grade spirit stones. Is there anyone else who wants to bid higher? Meng Qi raised her eyebrows. Everyone was probably frightened by her. After all, even if the cultivator who came to auction this jade slip sold it cheaply, some sects who wanted to buy the jade slip would still raise the price again after weighing the pros and cons. What everyone was dissatisfied with was the additional condition of having to share the jade slip with the auctioneer. The trichiliocosm had experienced several catastrophes that were recorded until now. It was said that hundreds of thousands of years ago, the Starfall Sea did not exist at all. The place where the Starfall Sea was now was just an abyss that connected the three realms of humans, demons, and demons. Tens of thousands of years ago, a great war broke out between the cultivators and the demon world. The losses were extremely tragic. There were countless casualties among the major sects of the four realms. The Starfall Sea was the transportation formation for the demon world's invasion. In the end, countless cultivator seniors had no choice but to disperse all of their cultivation and go against the heavens. They traded their lives to block the endless stream of demon cultivators in the Starfall Sea. Later, the mighty cultivators of the four realms gathered and forced the demon cultivators back to the Starfall Sea. During that catastrophe, the people were plunged into misery and suffering. There were countless casualties. Even the mighty cultivators who were about to step into the Mahayana realm died in the Starfall Sea. After that, the surroundings of the Starfall Sea were gradually filled with resentment and killing intent, forming the current dangerous place. In the following tens of thousands of years, the Trichiliocosm, Yao, and Demon worlds all had great wars. Almost every time, the Starfall Sea was the final battlefield. The Starfall Sea became increasingly dangerous. Later, the Yao Lord token appeared in the Yao world. A peerless elite came out of nowhere to steal the Yao Lord token and unify the Yao world. The Yao Lord restrained the Yao cultivators and eased the relationship with the Trichiliocosm. At least, the nobles and royalty of the Great Sky Yao became friendly with the Xiuzha of the Trichiliocosm. That was why there were Yao cultivators like Su Junmo, who stayed in the Trichiliocosm and had good relationships with the major sects of the Xiuzha. Of course, there were Yao cultivators like Sikong Changlai who secretly crossed realms to the Trichiliocosm and killed Xiuzha. The relationship between the demon world and the Trichiliocosm had never been good. Thousands of years ago, it caused many medical cultivator sects to lose their legacies and give birth to the Medical Cultivator Spell Assembly. That time, they also invaded the Trichiliocosm through the Starfall Sea. After tens of thousands of years, the Starfall Sea became a famous danger zone in the three realms. It was said that there was no water in the Starfall Sea at all. It was formed from the blood, killing intent, and resentment of the powerful Xiuzha, Yao, and demon cultivators who had died. Even the strongest of the world would be completely devoured and their souls destroyed if they fell into the Starfall Sea. The pavilion master of the Starfall Pavilion had promised to enter the Starfall Sea to hunt ferocious beasts. He was referring to the periphery of the Starfall Sea. Just there alone, there were many treasures. Rare herbs, spirit herbs, and the fur, bones, and blood of the ferocious beasts were nothing to be talked about. Just the treasures left behind by the seniors after they died were enough to make many Xiuzha envious. That was why for tens of thousands of years, no matter how dangerous the Starfall Sea was, there were always people who went in to take risks. Wealth was found in danger. Meng Qi recalled the rumors of the Starfall Sea that she had read in books or heard from others. She recalled the black-clothed male cultivator she saw outside the Heaven-class auction hall. Was he really going to enter the Starfall Sea for 10 years? Meng Qi knew a little about the other party's sect. Although they were a Sword Shio sect, they were slightly different from the other Sword Shio sects in the 3,000 domains. Their swords were usually very narrow and short. Once the sword was drawn, it was dangerous and ferocious, often coming from places that the opponent would not expect. So when they practiced the sword, they had to go to dangerous places. The more dangerous the place, the more powerful the life-bond sword would be. It was not strange that he chose the Starfall Sea. Even without this incident, he would have entered the Starfall Sea sooner or later. After all, Meng-Chi had picked him up at the edge of the Starfall Sea back then. She gathered her thoughts and pulled away the thoughts that had already flown away. So any spells and talismans that came out of the Starfall Sea would usually be very powerful. 2,000 Xian Spirit Stones was actually not expensive. After all, a powerful spell could sometimes allow a mid-level sect to rise. It could allow a sect that could not squeeze into the top 10 of the 4 domains to have the capital to fight for a spot in the top 10. Those Xiozha would definitely fight for it. In the end, the final price would exceed tens of thousands, or even 100,000 Xian Spirit Stones. Meng-Chi would not find it strange. This was not something that could be measured with spirit stones. She would just throw a brick to attract jade. Meng-Chi was in a good mood after winning the Blazing Feather. Even though she knew that she would definitely not be able to win this spell, she still thought optimistically. After all, she had participated in a transaction of tens of thousands of Xian Spirit Stones at the Heaven-class auction house. She poured another cup of tea for herself and leisurely held the teacup and slowly sipped it. Meng-Chi waited for a long time, but the valley was still quiet. No one called out a price for a long time. She was a little confused. How much had the bidding reached? Was it because the price was already too high that everyone had to think carefully before making a bid? Meng-Chi knew that she could not see the Xiozha around her, but she still could not help but look left and right. In a daze, she recalled the legendary Kung Fu of the Starfall Sea. These big shots had already pushed the price to a number that made the leaders of the major sects hesitate. So powerful. Meng-Chi drank another mouthful of tea and silently praised in her heart. When on earth would she have so much money? Meng-Chi did not know that in the Heaven-class auction house, all the leaders and elders of the major sects of the 4 realms who were present were a little uneasy. In the past 3 days, all of them had entered the sky beyond heaven one after another. As long as they entered the sky beyond heaven, all the Xiozha who were qualified to enter the Heaven-class auction house would automatically receive a message from the owner of this place. The 7th mountain of the sky beyond heaven will reappear in the world in 3 months. This month, the Heaven-class auction house will auction the 13th item. There are several mountain entry tokens. If you are fated, you can take one. I don't like phoenixes. I hope you can only choose one of them. The meaning of this sentence was very clear. Outside the sky beyond Heaven City was a paradise for Xiozha above the spirit-severing stage to explore. Although it was called a paradise, it was abnormally dangerous. Every once in a while, a mountain would reappear in the sky beyond heaven. Most of the time, a new secret place or paradise would appear in the mountain. Every time, the owner of the sky beyond heaven would invite the major sects to explore together. Then, in the Heaven-class auction house before the mountain reappeared, a mountain entry token would become the 13th item. Each entry token could allow a sect to send 5 people to participate in the competition. Sometimes, there would be many mountain entry tokens. The owner of this place had auctioned a total of 24 mountain entry tokens. The Blessed Enclave at that time was indeed huge and dangerous. Of course, the rewards were also very generous. Sometimes, only 3 or 4 mountain entry tokens would appear in the auction. Moreover, every auction would be a restricted auction. For example, sometimes, the owner of this place would restrict the participation of Xiozha sects in the auction of mountain entry tokens. Sometimes, only sects that knew a certain type of Xiozha could participate in the auction. The owner of this place still did not say how many mountain entry tokens there were in the auction this time. Before the auction of the 13th item began, everyone could only guess. However, the conditions of the restriction made everyone feel a little confused. What did it mean that he did not like phoenixes? The blaze feather was one of the items in the heaven-class auction house this time. Many sects had already received the news in advance. Originally, if there was no mountain entry token this time, many sects would still be willing to bid for the blaze feather. In any case, it would not be too expensive. However, since the mountain entry token was a real treasure, everyone thought about it and willingly gave up on the blaze feather. This was nothing. Compared to the mountain entry token, the blaze feather was really nothing. However, now that there was an unsolved shouja, many sects still wanted to fight for it. Chapter 58. Linghu Xie waited patiently. Apart from the 300 Tier 8 spirit stones just now, there were no higher bids. Meng Qi rested his chin on his hand lazily, too. He chewed on the candy and poured himself a cup of tea from time to time. The tea in the Outland was also very special. It should be a rare tea that contained spiritual energy. With every cup she drank, Meng Qi would feel a warmth flowing from her stomach to her limbs and bones, making her feel very comfortable. Other than the two of them, all the cultivators participating in the auction in the entire heaven-class auction house were going crazy. So, did they misunderstand before? He didn't like the phoenix because of the blazing feathers, but because of this unknown spell? Then, was the incantation related to the phoenix? Or was this spell related to the Seventh Peaks Grotto Heaven that had appeared this time? That was why the owner of this place had restricted the choice of only one of the two. If that was the case, then there was another problem. How should he choose? Which one to choose? Almost all of the top 10 sects in the 4 realms had come because of the mountain entrance medallion auction. At the very least, those who came were elders who could make decisions in the sect. Many sects, such as the Burning Sky Palace, had their sect masters come in person. Even though they were all cultivators, they were still in a dilemma as to how to choose. Based on past experience, the heavens beyond paradise would produce a huge amount of resources, and the participating sects would definitely not suffer losses. Heavenly materials and earthly treasures, weapons, dharma treasures, spells, cultivation experiences, and so on left behind by powerful seniors. For example, the Blessed Enclave had auctioned off 24 tokens. In the end, every sect or individual cultivator who had participated in the auction had obtained a token that was worth at least more than the most precious item in the auction. BQGXSYDW. Of course, the stronger sects would gain even more. It was said that there was a time when a sect obtained a magical treasure by chance. It contained the cultivation experience left behind by a senior of their sect who had died thousands of years ago. That sect had lost many of its inheritances in a calamity. After that incident, the lost inheritances were replenished, and the entire sect's strength advanced by leaps and bounds. In addition, there were several genius disciples in the sect who returned to the peak within 100 years. Since then, every time a blessed enclave appeared, all the major sects would fight for it. They had no objections to the Master of Sky beyond Heaven's restrictions on the auction of the mountain entry tokens because he was very fair. Every time the conditions were set, it was to ensure that the participating sects would benefit as much as possible. He suspected that the conditions set by the owner of this place to restrict the auction did not exist. Now, it was a matter of choice. The shouja of the large sects that had come to participate in the auction were slightly vexed. Had they misunderstood before? He didn't like phoenixes, so he didn't ask everyone not to take pictures of blazing feather. Then this spell, forget it, just give up. In any case, it might not be anything good. There was no need to gamble and give up the mountain entry token later. Thus, the heaven-class auction house quieted down once more. Meng Qi drank another cup of tea and ate a pink pastry with the fragrance of plum blossoms. The auctioneer, Linghu Xie, looked around and said with a smile, "Congratulations, fellow Taoist. You have obtained this law art for 308th grade spirit stones. Please make a great soul oath first." Once you crack this law art, you will share it with the seller. Of course, you can also exchange it for any other law art. Meng Qi. Her hand that was holding the teacup trembled. Before she could react, the secret compartment on the wall opened again, and the black wooden tablet was presented in front of her again. This time, the wooden tablet was covered in a layer of soft blue light. Meng Qi blinked. She actually won it again? Was it so easy? Moreover, according to this fellow Taoist Linghu, if she could detoxify this law art, she could exchange it for another law art. Only 308th grade spirit stones. She had made a fortune, okay? One had to know that the 3000 Worlds law art was never cheap. Even the most popular first-grade law art often sold for hundreds of 5th grade and 6th grade spirit stones. Meng Qi clasped the middle finger of her right hand and pressed it against her heart. She made a great soul oath according to the rules. The blue light around the black wooden tablet gradually faded. Meng Qi reached out and picked it up, still feeling a little incredulous. She had left a divine sense mark on the wooden tablet. She had spent more than 209th grade spirit stones and 308th grade spirit stones in exchange for a blazing feather and a law art jade slip from the fallen star sea. Today, was she the most cost-effective buyer in the heaven-class auction house? But why didn't the other cultivators bid? It was only a few hundred 8th grade spirit stones. Even she could afford it. Meng Qi happily held the black wooden tablet and admired it over and over. She guessed that the thing that attracted everyone to participate in the auction was too precious. These powerhouses of the large sex were too lazy to waste time on such a small thing. The heaven-class auction house was silent for about half an incense stick's time. Clouds and mist drifted by slowly, and the cultivators were a little upset. Since the beginning of the heaven-class auction house, there had never been an auction item that was sold for a few hundred 8th grade spirit stones. Everyone was a little uninterested in the next few items. Soon, after a few rounds of bidding, the 8th to 11th items were sold at a price that was neither too high nor too low. Meng Qi had gained a lot. She didn't want to leave early. She sat in a room with relish and watched the next auction. She would take it as an eye-opener. The 12th item was originally the most precious item in today's auction. It was a tattered scroll. Linghu waved his hand, and the scroll spread out in the air. No matter where one sat, one could always see the scroll. The yellow scroll looked very ancient. Sky Beyond Heaven had obviously repaired the scroll, but it could still be seen that about 1/3 of the content was missing. This is an ancient array remnant scroll. When it was found, it was already broken and turned into thousands of fragments stored in 2 wooden boxes. Linghu Xie smiled and introduced 7 cultivators from Sky Beyond Heaven who are proficient in refining. Took a month to repair it to its current state. They only need 1 more wooden box to restore this array. He paused and said slowly, according to the speculation of the 7 cultivators who repaired the scroll, it's very likely to be an ancient refining array that has been lost for 10,000 years. Which one is it? Someone immediately asked. I don't dare to speculate. Linghu Xie smiled and said to the place where the voice came from, we invited the top refining sects of the 4 realms to study it together. This is very likely to be the refining array of one of the ancient soul-chasing 5-element sword. The audience was instantly in an uproar. For a long time, the refiners of the 3000 worlds were in decline and almost couldn't recover. A large part of the reason was that during the catastrophe 10,000 years ago, the refiners could only rely on arrays and magic treasures to protect their sections. Their ability to protect themselves was very weak. Once the arrays and magic treasures were broken, what followed was often the tragedy of sect annihilation. Countless ancient refining arrays disappeared in the long river of time, just like that. A few hundred years ago, there was a refiner sect that had been passed down for 10,000 years. They accidentally found an array scroll left behind by their ancestors. On it were 3 arrays that had long become legends. Relying on that scroll, the refiners of the recent few hundred years faintly showed signs of rising. Meng Qi had never heard of the soul-chasing 5-element sword, but he knew the two words, ancient. Sure enough, once Linghu Xie said this, the atmosphere in the valley that had been cold for a long time finally became lively again. Fellow Taoist Linghu, the starting price. Someone immediately urged. 10,000 Xian spirit stones. Linghu Xie said with a smile. The finale was indeed different. Meng Qi looked at the gradually heated atmosphere in the auction house. Soon, the price rose from 10,000 Xian spirit stones to 100,000 Xian spirit stones, 120,000 Xian spirit stones, and a fourth-grade array. Someone else said. Meng Qi had never learned about arrays systematically. When her honored master taught her, he taught her whatever was useful. Her cultivation was too low to learn for the time being, so he changed it and taught it to her in a simpler way. At this point, the bidding was no longer something that could be settled with spirit stones. The heaven-class auction allowed for the addition of additional items, but at this time, the owner of the auction item had to make the choice. Meng Qi's heart stirred when she heard about the fourth-grade array. During this period of time, she had already faintly discovered that the arrays her honored master taught her were indeed extraordinary. Every beast that she took out and recognized were inexplicably shocked. She just didn't know what rank the 4 extreme arrays and the grand fire array were. If she could see her honored master again in the future, she could ask him. Thinking of her honored master, Meng Qi's happy mood instantly became gloomy. She subconsciously looked up at the sky. Clouds and mist filled the air, but she could still see the highest floating island in the sky floating leisurely. It had a unique and independent feeling. At the top of the heaven-class auction house's valley, in an elegant courtyard, a white-robed man lay on a soft couch. He didn't even bother to watch the auction. Even in the sky beyond heaven, there was a hint of tiredness on his face. There was no one else in the courtyard except for him. Only his slender fingers were casually playing with 2 pitch-black wooden tablets. In a few days, he had broken his own principles twice for a human foundation establishment cultivator. But what could he do? In order to buy the phoenix's feathers for him, she worked hard to earn spirit stones. She even earned a few 9th-grade spirit stones so seriously and desperately. Unfortunately, since the establishment of the sky beyond heaven, it had its own set of strict and complete order. Even he couldn't destroy it. Moreover, there were too many things about Meng Qi that he still couldn't see through. For the time being, he didn't want her to know too much. The white-robed man listened as the bidding became more and more intense. In the end, the incomplete scroll map was sold at the highest price. His expression was still lazy as his gaze swept down. The young girl was still sitting in the room happily eating candy and snacks. She had no intention of leaving at all. A faint smile flashed across the white-robed man's eyes. She usually looked very steady, but in fact, she was still a 17 or 18-year-old girl. She had almost eaten half of the candy and snacks on the coffee table. Did she like it that much? The 12th auction item was sold, and the valley became quiet again. Today's main event had finally begun. Even Meng Qi looked out curiously. Everyone, I've been waiting for a long time, Linghu Xie said with a smile. Then let's start now. There are a total of 16 mountain entry tokens this time. 16 tokens. Then the 7th peak's blessed grotto heaven this time is not small. Someone sighed softly. Brother Xianyuan, it seems that you're determined to get it. Clearly, someone recognized the voice of the speaker and said with a smile, He, I don't dare to say that I'm determined to get it, but everyone present is yearning for it. After all, the sky beyond heaven's blessed grotto heaven has never let anyone return empty-handed, the person from before said again. Meng Qi was not yearning for it. She was just curious about what would be auctioned at the end. When she heard the word sky beyond heaven's blessed grotto heaven, she knew that this matter definitely had nothing to do with her. Meng Qi stood up and quickly left the auction hall. The entire floating island was still empty. Everyone was still in the auction hall, fiercely competing for the mountain entry tokens. Meng Qi had not walked far when she suddenly heard another set of footsteps behind her. She subconsciously turned around. Before the auction began, the man in black that she had seen on the floating island was walking behind her. The man's facial features were as sharp as a knife, and his expression was rather cold. He was like a sword, sharp and merciless. Once he attacked, his sword was cold and frosty, and it would deter the four realms. This man was the leader of the Eastern Territories sword cultivator sects, the youngest pavilion master of the Falling Star Pavilion, Pei Mufeng. Meng Qi thought of his promise to enter the Falling Star Sea for 10 years for the medical cultivation spell assembly, and her heart skipped a beat. She politely bowed to him. The young pavilion master of the Falling Star Pavilion was powerful, talented, and proud. He was truly extremely talented in cultivation, enough to look down on most of the young powerhouses in the Four Realms. Meng Qi only thought of his promise to enter the Falling Star Sea, and did so subconsciously. However, Pei Mufeng stopped in his tracks and meticulously returned her greeting. His eyes were like cold stars, bright and deep. When he raised his head, his gaze quickly swept past Meng Qi's face, and quickly looked elsewhere. Meng Qi stepped aside and let him go first. She did not have the admiration and longing that the sword cultivators had for the young first sword of the sword sect. However, she greatly admired Pei Mufeng, who was willing to enter the Falling Star Sea to search for spirit herbs and kill ferocious beasts for the medical cultivation spell assembly. Pei Mufeng's expression was indifferent. Fellow Taoist, are you also not interested in the blessed grotto heaven? Meng Qi smiled and said calmly, I have too few spirit stones, I can't afford it. Pei Mufeng seemed to be stunned. His gaze instinctively fell on Meng Qi's face, and then quickly turned away. He looked in another direction. I have to wait for the elders in the sect to finish bidding. Fellow Taoist, are you interested in going to the Beyond Heaven Tower with me for a drink? Have a drink? Forget it. Was he not drunk enough last time? Meng Qi shook his head. Sorry, I can't hold my liquor very well. Pei Mufeng did not force him. He probably thought that Meng Qi was like himself, a young cultivator who did not want to wait for the elders in the sect to bid and wanted to get some fresh air. He cupped his hands in salute to Meng Qi again, and then quickly walked forward. Meng Qi waited for him to walk away before continuing to walk towards the transportation formation. Pei Mufeng still did not change. He was not interested in most things other than swords. It was also because of this that he made such a promise. TSK, Meng Qi looked up ahead. Pei Mufeng's figure had already disappeared. She did not remember that this pavilion master of Falling Star Pavilion had any entanglements with Shiji Lu Qingran. But this time, he said that he did this for a young female medical cultivator. Meng Qi raised her eyebrows. It was rare for her to be a little gossipy. Someone like Pei Mufeng would actually be attracted to female cultivators? When she opened her eyes, it was almost noon. Meng Qi only felt something fluffy beside her hand. Looking down, little Qi had come out at some point and was lying beside her. Meng Qi reached out to hold the other's little paw. What happened? She would clean and apply medicine for little Qi's wound every day. Although there was no way to completely stop the bleeding, the wound was not bleeding so badly recently. Usually, there would only be a little blood seeping out the next day. But today, the soft white cloth wrapped around little Qi's front paw was already soaked in blood. Meng Qi looked at him and found that little white tiger's eyes had dimmed a lot. She hurriedly and carefully held little Qi's front paw and gently removed the white cloth wrapped around the wound. Why is it suddenly so serious? Meng Qi leaned closer, her heart aching. She was too close. Little Qi was caught off guard and was surrounded by the light medicinal fragrance on her body. The other party's warm breath landed on its little paw. Other than the light medicinal fragrance, there seemed to be a faint sweet fragrance. Little Qi. But it will be fine soon. Meng Qi looked up and smiled at it. She happily announced, I bought you. As she spoke, she reached out to rub little Qi's head and pinched its little ears. But when she thought of the other party's more complicated internal injuries, Meng-Chi could not help but sigh. As if guessing the reason for her sigh, Little Chi suddenly raised its uninjured paw and gently rubbed the back of Meng-Chi's hand. The soft touch pulled Meng-Chi back to reality. "It's okay." She smiled at Little Chi. "Although, let's take it slow. I will become stronger and stronger. There will be a day when I completely cure you." As she spoke, she could not help but pinch Little Chi's ears again. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.